Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prabh, and today we're going to discuss about CISA Domain 3. Thanks for sharing a great response on my Domain 1 and Domain 2 video, which motivate me to make Domain 3 video. And Domain 3 of CISA talk about the information system acquisition, development, implementation. See, it is easy for you to get the understanding of Domain 1 and Domain 2. Okay, but it is very, very difficult for you to have a visibility in Domain 3. That's why I made a detailed video on this, and I'm sure this can be used as a last minute pointer to understand how things works. So my name is Prabh, and for more information you can check my LinkedIn profile. I'm already CISA and I did a lot of training on CISA. And if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos on a similar topic. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. So domain 3 have total 12%, which is testable. Approx 18 question we can expect from the domain 3 in the exam, and domain 3 is divided into two parts. One is called information system acquisition and development, and the second part is called as a information system implementation. So first we're going to cover the information system acquisition development, and we also going to discuss about the top content around that area, and then we move to the information system implementation. So the first part is called as a information system acquisition and development. Okay, so first is called as a information system acquisition. As I said, information system is all about people, process and technology. And domain 3 is all about when you're working as an auditor, how you procuring, you need to audit the process of how they're acquiring the applications, how they're managing a governance in the applications and all that. And that is where the domain 3 is starting with the topic called information system acquisition. So information system is all about people, process and technology. Now there's a two thing. Either we can build our own application, that is something we can do, or either we can do internally a development. Either we can develop internally or either we can acquire from outside. So we have a two process we have. And there is a governance process behind that. Let's say example, company has told me, Prabh, we need to procure one application. So this is my company A, and we want to procure the application from the vendor. So we cannot simply go and procure. It's not like that. So we have to do the proper assessment of the vendor before we procure anything from there. So I will share my requirement. They will review my requirement. They validate the things, and then they provide me the application. Then I will use the application in my organization. Tomorrow, any kind of a security issue happen in the application, I'm the one who answerable to the customer. It is same like you're procuring some kind of a SaaS solutions. So we have a governance process here by which we procure the application from an organization or from the vendor. And this is the thing we're going to discuss about information system acquisition development. So objective of this process is to ensure the objectives are met through a structured management of information system, including the acquisition, development, implementation, and disposal. And as an auditor, my role will become in every stage. When we acquiring, are we covering all the documentations? Are we checking all the documentation? During a development, are we doing proper testing? Do you maintain all the documentations? During implementation, do you have a sign of documentation? So as an auditor, I'm going to audit each and every process. And that's why we say as a CISA candidate, you should have a sound understanding of information system, hardware and software. And this understanding should also extend beyond your definition of knowledge of terms and concept, like, identifying vulnerability, risk, and recommending a thorough controls and everything. So as a CISA candidate, you should have a good understanding of various application systems and architecture and their risk also. And that's something we're going to cover now in this particular domain. So that's something we need to identify. Now here what happen is, as an auditor role, when we're talking about, okay, he's the one who evaluate how the enterprise acquire, develop, implement the system. So we look for the documents and all that. It is just a high level. Second is we assess the risk, vulnerability control and system acquisitions. We have to make sure our technical solutions meet with the business need. And the most important part is we monitor the third party involvements to ensure that, okay, they compliance with the privacy. So my role as an auditor, I will be involved in all these things. So I should know this all activity, right? If I don't know, then how I can do the audits. So that something is very important for us. So that's why, when you're executing any kind of a application, developing any application, it is part of a project. So we have two terms here. One is called as a project, and one is basically called as a program. It is not a software program. Okay. So project is basically called as a set of activities which has a start time and they have an end time. That is called as a project. Example, if I'm conducting a CISA session, it is starting on 14th and it is finishing on 17th. That has a start time and end time. So that is called as a project. But when you're talking about program is a set of continuous activity. Like I'm doing a training program for this entire month where Monday to Friday I'm doing this and all that. So that's why I call group of project lead to the program. But when you're managing this project, is called as a project portfolio. So when you running this project, there's a lot of process behind that. There's a lot of activity behind that. And that is called as a governance. Governance is called a set of operation. In my domain 2, I already covered that. So governance is set of operations by which you manage this particular project. So that is why we have an activity called as a project governance. Exactly. Project governance. So project governance ensure the structure, decision making and control over the project. Why? To align them with the business goals. So doing all these projects to make sure it is aligned with the business. And to monitor this, we have a project governance stuff, which include the documentation, appoint the right person, create a strategy and all that. So we have some key elements in the project governance and which is testable in the exam. And you should know this. Exactly. You should know this because if you don't know that, it is a problem. So we have some activities like example, like the first thing is called structure and policies. So we need to establish the rule of controls for managing a project and there should be someone who should be accountable for that. Second is we have to make sure all the projects should meet the business objective and risk strategy because ultimately we reduce risk to an acceptable level. The third important thing is called as a resource management. Whatever the resources we have to utilize this resource effectively. We have to see what is the dependency of one resource on other. So resource management is another important function, which is part of a project governance. And the last is called as stakeholder management. See, when you start any project, you set the expectation. Let's say example, we have expectation this project to be over by 14th March, 2025. So that expectation has been set. So we need to have some kind of a communication plan where we update them on a regular basis. There is a communication channel by which we need to inform them. So that is called as stakeholder management. So we need to ensure, we need to consider that, okay, what is the expectations? Are we meeting those expectations? Are we maintaining ethics? And consider all the social factor. That something is part of a requirement. Along with that, we also have a third party management. Sometimes what happen, so we are building an application, but some modules we are procuring from outside. So assessing those vendor before we are procuring anything, that is part of a third party management. So we need to ensure the external vendors align with the solution with business need. And I will give you one best example of that. Let's say example, I work for InfoSec Train. Okay, so this is InfoSec Train. And what we did, we are using one meeting software, but we took some APIs from the Zoom, or we took some API from GoToMeeting. Okay, so we have integrated that API in a meeting software, and this meeting software we are using with the customer. Tomorrow, if meeting software is down, definitely you as a customer reach out to me only. Prabh, what is this? We are unable to join the session and all that. So we are answerable for that. Understood? So we have to make sure when we onboard them, we assess all the risk. And there's a dedicated team in the company, which is called as a third party risk assessment team. They assess the vendor on regular basis to make sure they're onboarding a right vendor. And if any kind of an issues are there, which can be addressed thoroughly. So that is when the project governance, we have one function called as a third party management to ensure the external vendors align their solution with the business needs. That's a very important part. Is it clear? Now, when you're doing a project, okay, so if you take an example of the project, we have some challenge in the project governance. Okay, the first is called lack of clear governance, which can lead to the project failure. And the most important thing is support of senior management. If you get any question around what is the biggest concern in implementing project and project governance, is senior management support. Because without senior management support, you can't do anything in the organization. So lack of clear governance can lead to project failure, lack of guidelines. Second is IS auditor has to ensure there is a proper segregation duty should be there. So that example, like there's a one project we are doing where the one team is doing a development. Okay. One team is doing a testing. Okay, and one team is doing a deployment. So now what happened? The development team is doing a development and the same team doing a testing. It's a conflict. Definitely, then the software is definitely work as per the report. So there's no independence. So we need to have a proper separation of a duty. The development will do the development only. The testing will do testing only. Deployment team will do deployment only. Deployment should not have access to development people. Development team should not have access to production environment. So we have to make sure when you're doing a project, the most important thing we need to focus is proper SOD, segregation duty. That's something we have to understand. And that's why for the project governance, the best practice, establish the project portfolio. The group of projects are called as a project portfolios. So by schedule, you can able to prioritize. Another important thing, define the roles and responsibility, that this person is responsible for this person is responsible for that. That is why in every company, we have a RACI chart, RACI, who is responsible, who is accountable, who need to be consulted, and who need to be informed. Okay, so if you set this kind of a structure, clarity and all that, it will be great. Okay, so that, in the case of any issue, we know to whom we need to reach out. It is very important for the governance, RACI need to be have. Example, I am responsible for conducting a training. If some issues come with my training, InfoSec and management is answerable for that. They're accountable. If for any doubt and all that, I will consult my senior and all that. And then I will inform about my batch output to the operation team. So this is very important. Okay, and that's something as a practice we should follow. So when we're talking about project management practice is a practice of three things: what skill you carry, what tool you're using, and what techniques you're performing. I repeat again, like I am a trainer. That is my role. To be a good trainer, you need to have some skill set, like communication skills and all that. And that's something I learn. But when I'm teaching CISA, when I'm teaching CISSP, I should have a knowledge. So application of a knowledge. And based on the knowledge only, I can able to upskill my skills. Okay, I can able to use tools. I can able to use techniques. So this is the most important, you can say, bread and butter of any candidate. So application of a knowledge, skill and tool and technique to execute project effectively, that is called as a project management practice. Now in project management, we have a phases, and the phases are testable in the exam. Okay. And this principle applicable everywhere. The first step is called initiation, where you define the objectives, scope, and feasibility of project, which is include the business case analysis and all that. Let's say example, I am building one enterprise application. So objective is to seamless the customer experience, digital transformations and all that. Scope is basically for the India division. Feasibility project, we talk about the benefit and everything. Then the second step is called as a planning, where you develop the timeline. Like this will be the timeline of this project. These are the 4 resources will be allocated. Resources mean people has been allocated for this. This money has to be allocated for this. This technology need to be allocated for this. This is called, so allocation resources part of a planning. And then we outline the risk strategy. If project go out of time, what is the impact? If project will be delivered in the, what is the impact? If resource is not available. So all those risk assessment parameter will be done in the planning stage. Then we execute the project with the defined resource and team. Then we monitor the project. So we use different metrics, CPM, Gantt charts, KPIs, just to track, are we on time? Can we switch the task and all that? And finally, we have a closing where the deliverables will be there, document, lesson learned, release resources. So as an auditor, my role will become in every stage. Like, as an auditor, I will check whether objectives has been documented. It is approved by the management. Okay. If they develop the timeline, is it approved? Okay. Sign off has been done. When they did the closure, is a closure acknowledgement get from the customer, looking for the sample email. See, one thing you need to understand, when CISA test your knowledge, they test your knowledge from audit perspective. But until unless you don't know the concept behind the audit, example, until unless you don't know project management practice, you can't audit this practice, right? So you really need to understand that how it works, so that in the exam, you know where it works. Okay, until you don't know in which stage we define the objective. As an auditor, you don't know what is the first document you need to collect. And that is how the CISA exam tests your knowledge. And this is how the CISA has prepared the content. They first talk about the concept, then talk about the auditor role. Is it clear? So that's something we have to look for. So these are the 5 phase activities we have that we follow for the project management function. See, I told you. Now there's a role of an auditor. So if you can see here, the first thing is, what is the role of an auditor? We need to ensure the project follow the structure governance model. So I will look for the project strategic document. I will look for the client acquisition, client approval emails. I will look for the metrics report. I will look for the planning document. So that's something I will look for to validate whether the project follow the structure governance model. Second is I will evaluate the risk control, compliance and security. So I will check, do they have a proper controls in place when they execute the project? Let's say example, do they follow separation duty while doing execution? Do they get a sign off during a delivery? So all those things need to be checked. Third is we have to also assess if the project methodology align with the business and regulatory requirement. How to verify that? We look for the business document and then we look for the project timeline. Is it meeting or not? So when you're doing the role of an audit here, so there are some key factors need to be considered, like understand common project management methodology, like what is agile, what is waterfall, that I'm going to cover in the further slide. Ensure change management process are in place, because any kind of unauthorized changes we have in the project, we need to document that. Okay, so unauthorized change can lead to the integrity issues. An ultimate goal of change management process is to track the accountability. So any kind of a changes in the project, it need to be go through a change management process. So tomorrow we can use change control logs to track how many changes are there. Because when auditor come for an audit, one of the most important logs he will ask for is change management logs. Then we also audit the project performance against the KPI and business goals. Like KPI say that 3 softwares has to be delivered in 6 months. Is it delivered or not? This much amount of code need to be right in this much amount of timeline. Is it delivered or not? So based on the KPI, we can do the audit. So as a CISA candidate, you must understand the phases of project management, associate risk and control measure, but no need to go in detail of each and every methodology. That is something part of a requirement. Okay, so next topic is called as a project management structure. See, when you want to execute any kind of a project in the organization, we follow one structured model. It means hierarchy. And by defining that hierarchy and all that, you're trying to control the project and distribute the expertise during a project execution. Let's say example, I'm saying we have an organization hierarchy. They work in that way. So same like we are here talking about the project management hierarchy. You know, what is the role of a project manager and how he works. So we have a 3 type of project management organization structure. One is called functional structure, second is project structure, and third is called matrix project. All 3 are testable in the exam. You should know this. Okay, so let's discuss that part. Okay, so the first one is called as a functional structure organization. So when we're talking about functional structure organization, you can see the statement it mentioned the project manager does not have a formal authority. The work is divided into departments and project manager advise but does not control the resources. So let's say example, this is my CEO. So here we have a department 1 which is called HR. Here we have a department which is called IT. Here we have a department which is called business, and here we have a department which is called as a operations. So role of a project manager is to basically helping the department. Is it clear? There's no dedicated department which is report to project manager. So his role will be ensure the delivery of activities in every project. So project manager just advise but does not control resources. So example like HR has the resources to execute the project, IT has a resource. So he will be act like a consultant for all the other projects. Ultimately it is a HR owner who basically take the final decisions. So that is basically called as a formal structured organization. Okay, so we're taking one example here which also give you a good visibility. Like we have a IT security compliance project with the CISO provide guidance but department head control the budget and resource allocation. So in a functional structure organization, project manager has only a staff function without formal management authority. The work is broken down in department and project manager is allowed to advise peers and team member only as to which activity should be completed. Second is called as a project structured organization where the project manager has a team. So like, let's say example, we have a PM and under PM we have a team and they have a formal authority over the project team. Okay, so project manager control the budget also, schedule also, and team also. Here he will not act like consultant, he is actually accountable for the projects. And there's a dedicated resource will be allocated under the project manager. So let's say example is we want to develop a new banking app. So project manager is responsible for development, testing, deployment, and ensuring aligned with the business goals. So in a project structured organization, project manager has a formal authority over those taking part in the project, and this include the authority of the budget and everything. But what we use in some cases, which is basically used in the cases called as this one, the third one, which is called as a matrix. Give me a second. So in matrix, what happens is we have a shared authority between the project manager and department head. He is the one who balances the control and flexibility between the functional and project structure, and it can be weak, balanced, and strong mix depending upon the level of control. It's a combination which is follow everywhere. So let's say example, cloud migration project where the IT department handle the infrastructure, security manage the compliance, and project manager ensure that deadlines are met. So we have a multiple departments and they're basically working together for project together. But Prabh, it looked like a similar like a function. In functional structure organization, he work independently in every function. Okay, in a project structure organization, we have a dedicated project manager. But in the case of shared authority, which is called matrix, the project manager and department head are working together. So it's a combination and it balances the control and flexibility. That's something we need to understand. So the question is, what is the role of an auditor? The first role is review the governance structure to ensure proper risk management. So for that, we will check for the strategy documents. We look for the project documents to make sure it has proper sign off. Second is I will look for the evidence regarding a audit project funding document. Do we have an approval mail of audit project funding? How they're prioritizing? Do they follow any documents and stakeholder commitment, which is a minutes of meeting record? Ask for the logs to check if the SOD has been followed properly. And as an auditor, my role will be in the advisory role. Okay, because it is a lead to the independence issues and all that, I cannot. So if someone is, I'm reporting to him, then it's not an audit, because I will definitely want to make my manager happy, right? So that's the reason. Then along with that, we also have other responsibilities like proper resource allocations to be there. Project oversight responsibility, ensure proper resources and allocation. Assess the IT steering committee role in a project prioritization. We monitor the project risk controls, and more important, ensure compliance with SDLC. So as an auditor, I will check, is this followed thoroughly or not? Is the properly resource has been allocated? Is the IT steering committee minutes of meetings are there which talk about the approvals? Do they have a proper metrics which basically talk about the requirements and everything? And the most important part here is called as a compliance. Do they follow compliance for SDLC? Okay, so this is the hierarchy we have. The first we have a senior management. Okay. Then we have a actually steering committee we have, which is steering committee is the combination of senior management, project sponsor, user management, project manager. You can say like that. So if you see my hierarchy, I can just remove for a second the steering committee section from here. Okay. And take it in this way: senior management, project sponsor, user management, and project manager. So you can ask, like, these are the called as a steering committee. And then we have a you can say different type of team, like functional team, which include my development team. We have an infrastructure team, we have a security team, we have a user team, and we have a QA team. Now, one thing you need to understand, between the user management and project manager, there is one independent role we have, which is called as a quality assurance. Okay, so that's something you need to understand, quality assurance, because it's basically very important to have a quality assurance, because they review the deliverables and all that. So if you ask me about the role of senior management, so any question in the exam talking about demonstrating a commitment to the project, approve the necessary resources, that is the role of a senior management. Okay, senior management, that is the role of a senior management. Then we have a project sponsor. Project sponsor is the one who provide funding for project and assume the ownership, and it's typically the senior manager in charge of the primary business. User management is very, very important for the exam. So user management assume the ownership of a project, allocate the qualified representative, and the most important part of this role is review and approve. Okay, that something is very important. Exactly. So they are the one who actually review, and they are the one who approve the system deliverables. So if you get any question around who review and approve the system deliverables, as they define and implement it, that is the answer called user management. And they actively participate in the business process redesign. Then we have a user project team, okay, which is missing here, but just for a reference, which completely assign the task and communicate effectively. And then we have a project manager who do the day-to-day activity. Then we have a quality assurance manager. Okay, they review the results and they check that whether the thing has been delivered, and their objective is to ensure the quality of project measuring, which is adherence to the SDLC process. Then we have a system development team, we have an infrastructure team, we have a security team, we have a other team. So these are different type of teams we have, which is required in the exam, and you need to know from exam point of view. So final note from the CISA candidate perspective is understand which project management structure apply in a different scenarios. You should know how the project governance align with the risk management, and more important, you also need to learn about IS auditor should participate without compromising audit independence. So which is basically the biggest concern we have. See, one thing we need to understand is when we're talking about any project, okay, the project can be controlled by the time, allocate time, define budget and resource. If time increase, budget will be increase, and according to that we need to reserve the resource. So everything has a dependency. So to execute the project, we need to control the time, we control the budget, and we control the resources. That something is part of a requirement. So here, when you're talking about the key project management element, so we have a 3 independent elements in the project management. One is called as a deliverables. Example like I want to build a website. So I'm giving you the sample of the website reports and all that. That is called deliverables. Okay, so work or product, the project, it must be completed. Like we said, like please ask for the deliverables of the email reports and everything, or that output. Second is called as the duration. The duration is all about the time required to finish the deliverables. And third is called as a budget. So these are 3 interdependent element we have, which is integrated. Because if you don't have a budget, okay, we might don't finish on time because of limited resource, and because of that we cannot be able to deliver the things. If we're running out of budget, if we're running out of duration, we might need to increase the budget. We cannot able to deliverables on a defined time. So that is why all are 3 interdependable. Okay, all are 3 interdependable. That's something we need to understand. So that is why we said more complex deliverable, longer duration and higher budget. That is true, right? And second is more resource can shorten the duration but impact the budget constraint. Someone said, okay, allocate 2 more resources on this, so we can able to complete the task on time. Definitely, but increase the budget. So it's not about, okay, people spending money for deliverables. Sometimes people spend money because they want to complete those activity in a limited time frame. Let's say example, I'm allocating database administrator and system administrator, one role, but they want to deliver this in a 3 months. So we will allocate extra resources, because for us, money is not an issue, time is an issue. So one principle always remember is more complex deliverables is equal to the longer duration and higher budget. And more resources can shorten the duration but impact the budget constraint. So that's something we need to validate. And that's a very important part actually. So once we're done with the time, budget and resource to execute the project, next important thing we need to understand is project technique, or we can say project estimation techniques. So it's very important. We need to estimate the project durations and all that, in which you get a lump sum idea about how long it will take. So estimate and scheduling is very important. So estimate and scheduling help in planning, software development, infrastructure projects and risk management. So we have a tools like Gantt chart, PERT and CPM. So Gantt chart, see any question talking about show the status of the project, where you stand and all that, the answer is Gantt chart, because Gantt chart is just like a wedding checklist with the dates. So it basically show you, when to book the venue, when to send the invitation, when you need to order the cake and hire the photographer. So everything is displayed in a timeline format. Like this is how hypothetical scenario, we have a timeline 1, 2, 3, 4 and all that. Okay, so it's like a bar chart showing your task, like you need to do shopping in the January. Okay, you need to have a caterer selection in the February. You need to have a guest finalist in a March. So it will give you the current status where you stand. Second is called as a PERT. PERT stand for Program Evaluation Review Technique. So ultimate goal of PERT is to provide you the visibility about the estimate uncertainty. Estimate uncertainty. See, Gantt chart talk about like visual timeline, like where you stand and all that. But PERT talk about the it basically talk about estimate uncertainty. So it basically help you, you can say it help you to understand about how long things will take. It help when you are unsure about how long things will take. Example, in you estimate like best case scenario, worst case scenario, average time for each task. So let's say example, if you're tailoring a wedding dress, it could take 2 weeks, best case, 5 weeks, worst case, 3 weeks, most likely. So PERT help to calculate the expected time to avoid the last minute surprise and all. The third is called as a CPM. CPM talk about the critical path method. It help you to identify the essential tasks. So Gantt chart talk about visual timeline, PERT talk about the uncertainty, and CPM talk about the critical path methodology, which is also help you to identify the essential tasks. So CPM basically find the most important task that that cannot be delayed, or the wedding won't happen on time. Like if you delay the booking the venue, everything else will get pushed back. So example, like if venue booking, dress selections, or catering orders are must do task in sequence, so CPM will track them to ensure nothing get delayed. So summary, you can say like that, get Gantt chart checklist with a timeline, PERT handle the uncertainty, and CPM focus on the critical tasks that cannot be delayed. So just like in project, these methods help in the planning things and all that to make sure we are on a particular schedule. And for that module, I'm going to cover each and everything in detail. Right now, I'm just talking about a very high level. Yeah. So any question in the exam talking about the tool used for estimating scheduling, we use PERT, CPM, and Gantt chart. So you can say PERT and CPM value we are using for the Gantt chart. Second, we have a resource allocation, how much resource we need to allocate. So we are using two important things called cost benefit analysis and EVM. So any talking about project feasibility, investment, what mechanism we use, the answer is cost benefit analysis and earn value management. And any question talking about a tool used for measuring the project size, measure the complexity, scale for accurate budgeting, then we use the answer called FPA. So keep it simple. If question talking about estimating and scheduling, then the answer is Gantt chart, PERT, and CPM. PERT and CPM we use together for Gantt chart. Second is like example, like in this Gantt chart, we can see January we have to do this, February. So I believe February is important for me first. What if everything cannot be done initial February? I will do first activity. So I will amend that in January. So by having a visual things in a Gantt chart, I can plan my CPM and PERT. Then what is the resource are required? So for that we use a cost benefit analysis and EVM. And if you want to measure a particular software project size and all that, we use the FPA. So as an auditor, you should know all these things. The next thing is that as an auditor role in a project technique, he verify if project estimation align with the resource and risk tolerance. That's something we have to look for. Look for the privacy evidences, privacy practices. Is it followed in the project? That's a very important part. The third important thing, evaluate the project governance structures to prevent the scope creep. Scope creep means suppose I join as a system administrator. Then without they have escalated me to, or they have upgrade me to network administrator. My previous access has not been revoked. It's still there. So that is called as an access creep. Same with scope creep, basically mean undocumented scope. Continuously they adding more and more things into the scope. It has not been documented yet. So that is, so if you're having a proper governance structure, we can able to prevent the scope creep. We also check if the risk and controls deliverables align with the business need, because that is another important part we have for the functions. We look for the sign off approvals and everything. So as a final tip for CISA candidate, make sure you master how the project techniques influence the cost, duration, and risk, and ensure the compliance with the IT governance and audit principle. See, when we're talking about the project functions, so we have three things here: portfolio, program, and project management that we discuss. So now we're going to discuss in detail. So the first part is called as a portfolio, program, and project management. All these are activities working together to make sure we are aligning the IT and business strategy. And by aligning that, we have to make sure we are able to manage the resource effectively. So when you're talking about this term, the first term is called as a portfolio. See, when I'm saying I have a lot of portfolio with me, so I'm handling the multiple projects. So portfolio is a collection of projects and program. See, hierarchy, like we have a first portfolio under which we can have a multiple programs. and under which we have a multiple projects. Understood? So that something is part of a requirement. Is it clear? So the first part when you're talking about here is portfolio, a collection of projects and program managed as a group to achieve the strategic objectives. So let's say example, company is going for a IT transformations, which include the ERP implementation, cybersecurity upgrades, and cloud migration. So these are the list of programs we have. So group of programs lead to the portfolio. Now, second part we talk about is the program. So program is a set of related projects which is managed in a coordinated way. Like we have a ERP system which consists of multiple projects like infrastructure setup. We have data migrations, training and processing automations. That something is called as a program. Like as a ERP is my portfolio, ERP is my program, and under which we have a small project. Like first project is set up the infrastructure, then set up the data migrations, then we train people, and then we have a process. So each and everything has a particular timeline. And the third is called as a which is called as a project. So project is a temporary effort with specific deliverables, which has a start and end time, like developing a new payroll systems. Okay, so when we're talking about key characteristics of a program, like it has a limited time frame with start and end date because there's no end date. Second is strategic alignment with the business goals. We are using multiple projects to create a program, and program is aligned with the business. Higher budget and risk level compared to individual projects, definitely, because if one entire program is done, it's a big impact. And required the proper governance and structure management, which include the policy, strategy, and everything. That's why we have a different type of roles in the program organization, and this is something testable in the exam. So first is called as a program owner, which define the scope and oversee the entire program. Okay, so I can take cloud as a program. I can say audit as a program, in which I will have a data center audit as a project. I have a ERP as a project. Is it clear? Which has a start and end time. Like in every organization, we have a one annual audit program in which we define the 6 to 7 audit projects. So program owner define the scope and oversee the program. Program manager execute and monitor the program objectives, and program team implement the specific project within the program, which is also called as a project. You can say these are also called as a project managers or project team members. So this is something you need to know from the exam point of view. So when you're talking about the program perspective and everything, so we have a profile called PMO, not Prime Minister of it. It is called as a Project Management Office. So they provide the governance, guideline, and process to standardize the project management across the organization. So role of PMO is that improve the project maturity, because under which we are running a multiple projects. They provide the tools and template for each projects. They ensure the compliance with the regulatory, and they also track the project performance and risk. Moreover, they also support the project managers with training and mentoring. Like we called as a team, which is called as a project management office we called, and that's something part of the documentation too. And in layman term, you can say a PMO is like a control center. Okay, it is like a control center for managing projects in an organization, because sometimes we need a structured process, right? So we are running a cybersecurity project, we are running an audit project, we are running an infrastructure project. So we have a project 1, we have a project 2, we have a project 3. So we need a one control center to manage entire projects, and that is why we called as a PMO. And it ensure that project should follow the structured process, meet the deadlines, and stay within a budget. And why PMO is important? Because it ensures the consistent project execution. So they follow the same language. And sometimes what happens, we need a standardization, like this is the minimum document we need in every project. And more important, track the project performance reporting. And one more important thing, PMO, you can say, is the backbone of the project success. Understood? Because if you don't have a PMO, then it's a problem. Exactly. So that's something we need to have that visibility. So PMO govern process, not a project execution. Project manager execute task and manage the project content. I think that will give you clarity. Now, what is the role of an auditor in portfolio, program, and project management? So they verify that all the IT programs align with the business strategy. We look for the both documents. We assess the budget, scheduling, risk management process. Let's say example, you can check the current timeline of the project and compare with the timeline that we agreed. Hope it is not running out of time. Ensure the proper documentation, governance structure exists, and like example, I will tell you how it can be asked. So question can be asked in a form of first step or most important step. Let's say example, you are an auditor and you are doing an audit for the portfolio, program and project management, and you want to ensure the project is aligned with the business strategy. So you will ask what is the first step? See, first step is basically we do the examination, then we do the interview, and then we do the validations, okay, or evidence we say. So here what happen is I will examine all the documents to verify whether it meet the business strategy. I will collect all the documents. Okay, so that's how it can be asked. So we need to ensure the proper documentation and governance structure is exist, and we also need to review that PMO role is documented and all that. And more important part is we need to understand how the programs interconnect with the projects. Okay, are we using a shared resources? And we also evaluate the portfolio to evaluate the IT resources, allocations, governance and compliance, which is part of a requirement. One more important thing, when we're talking about the project portfolio management, they also ensure that, you know, the projects, whatever we have, the programs, whatever we have, it should be aligned with the business. So three things are there. It should be aligned with the business strategy, fine. We should able to optimize resources, like, you know, with the limited resource we can able to execute, which save cost. And more important, we should able to deliver the value. Let's say example, I allocated my 2 instructor for this training. So I am optimizing my resource. So I have a control and make sure I will deliver the session on time. So we maintaining one concept which is called as a project portfolio database, a database which maintain the mandatory component. It is used to track the owner, schedule, objective, and more important, it basically have a reports and everything, which is part of the function. So key objective of project portfolio management is optimization to ensure the portfolio results are maximized, very, very important. And second is align the project with strategic objectives. The third important thing we talk about here is resource coordination. So we need to manage internal, external dependencies. We can see if the one person can be execute the 2 projects or part of 2 projects. So we need that resource coordination. So, and by that I can able to optimize my resource. And last is I have a knowledge sharing to ensure the learning transfer across the project. So when we starting any kind of a project in the company, one of the most important part called as a project benefit realization. And that is the next slide I'm going to cover. Okay. So project benefit realization. So let's say example, I want to convey my management, I want to go for CISA training. Okay. So until unless I don't give them a value about what is the value we get from this project, okay, they cannot able to convince. So first step is explain them about the benefit realization from this project, and then you submit the business case. Both are different. Okay. So project benefit realization is all about what is the expected value we get from a project. And the data of project benefit realization can be feed into the business case. Okay. So we actually, you can say we basically move beyond the project delivery to the long-term value assessment. And we have 2 important aspects in the benefit realization. First is defining the expected benefit. By moving data in the cloud, by moving into the cloud, we can able to save cost. We can increase the automations, we can scalable the thing. That's called defining an expected benefit. Or by clearing a CISA exam, I can help with the projects. And then we talk about the KPI, key performance indicators, like decrease in the cost, increase in the revenue, increase in the resource utilizations. So these are part of a benefit realization process. Benefit realization means a process of assessing the project and doing an assumption what is the benefit we get from this project. So, and by doing this, I can, as I said, it can greatly assist in the business case. Third is we also track and monitor the progress, validate the assumptions of the risk, what is the possible risk, and ensure the ROI, return of investment. So let's take one practical example. So there is a company who want to invest in ERP system. Okay. So benefit realization ensure that the ERP deliver cost saving through automations. Okay. We have not execute yet. It is just an assumption. Okay. System meet the regulatory compliance and IT asset will provide the business value. And then it become a scope of the business case. And then that submit in the management. So it's very important whenever we execute any project, go for any project, we do the project benefit realization. Like I'm going for a software. What is the benefit I will get from a software? Save cost, productivity and all. This is all a part of a project benefit realization. So what is the role of an auditor here? So he first validate the ROI, return of investments. Okay, he will look for the business impact. That's a very important part. The second is we need to ensure that all these activities is aligned with the strategic goal. That's a very, very important part. The third, we also assess the KPIs. Are we meeting the defined KPIs? This is documented. And we look for the reporting accuracy of the project architecture. And do they document the risk management functions? Like, did they documented the risk associated with this project? And we also document the weakness in the SDLC and all that. And that is why in the project benefit realization, we have a 4-step process. So as I said, the business benefit realization, okay, has a 4 phases, and ultimately providing a delivery of business value, right? Aligning the outcome with the strategic goal. So first step is understanding. So it's very important to clearly define the business benefits and what is the expected outcome of the project. Let's say example, there's a bank. Hypothetical scenario, there is a bank. They want to launch a mobile app. So you identify the benefits like improving of the customer experience, faster transactions and all that. Another example is we have decided we want to go digital banking solution. Digital banking solution. That's my task. So if I want to go for digital banking solution, I can increase the sales. I can expand my business in more regions. So I'm explaining everything in the first step called understanding. Second is called as a plan, where I develop the KPI. KPI like key performance indicator. I will monitor the strategies, governance structure. Let's say example, I'm setting a KPI that app should be processed 90% of transactions in 2 minutes or within a 2 seconds. Hypothetical scenario. So that is basically called as a, this is a requirement called as a KPI. So we develop the KPI, monitor the status, because just executing a project does not make sense. Okay, we need to look for other metrics also. The third thing we look for is called manage and report. Okay, so once you set the KPI, you will track the performance. We assess the risk and document the progress. So we monitor the app performance weekly, and we try to resolve the customer complaints quickly. And finally, we have a evaluate, where we conduct the post-implementation review to validate the ROI and adjust the strategies if I need. Example, like if app fails to reduce customer wait time, update feature based on the feedback. So that something is part of a evaluate. So all those things is part of a requirement. So the key takeaway is benefit realization process ensure the IT investments or your investments translating into business value by focusing on the outcome, tracking the progress and making things. And once we have this, we can take the things. Yeah. So we have an example here. One more use case I have created here. So you get a visibility. Like there is a online order management system we have. So scenario is enterprise plan to invest in application that enable customers to manage order online. So ROI calculation include business cost, like development cost, security controls. So that is something is the cost we have. Then we talk about here is business benefit. So what is the revenue growth? Like higher sales due to the customer convenience, cost saving, which is reduced dependency on customer support staff. That is called as a business benefit. And then we talk about the key takeaway, like ROI compare business value versus cost to determine if the project is go decision. And it also serve as a benchmark for tracking the benefit and realization. So these are basically part of the case study. Okay. So documenting development costs, talk about the business benefit, and then we take the final call. So these are something is important part of the function. So next is called as a project initiation. See, when we start any project, we need to have a PID document, project initiation document. And we need an approval from the management on the PID, which talk about what is the project, scope of the project and all that. So we have follow one process in the project initiation, which is called formalize the project approval and set the direction. So when you're doing an audit of any project and all that, the first thing we ask for the PID, project initiation document, because that gives the viewpoint about the project, which includes scoping and all that. And acceptance of our email on the PID, it reflects that, okay, the management has authorized that project to be run in the organization. So we have some key approaches for the project initiations. The first is called as a one-to-one meeting. So when we start any project, some projects start with one-to-one meeting where the project manager will have a direct communication with the team and discuss about project and all that. So one-to-one critical people are there with them. They explain about the project. Second is called as a kickoff meeting. Kickoff meeting where we introduce the team, project scope and expectation, high level. Sometimes what happened, we used to have a project start workshop. So let's say example, we are doing a new project on information security. Before doing that particular project, we have a trainings about that project. We give them training, we give them a how to handle this and all that. So that is part of a project start workshop. Like example, we are training people on new DPDP regulation. That is part of a project start workshop. And last is called as a combination approach, which can be used like a, one-to-one with kickoff meeting, project start and everything. So these are the different kind of approaches we have that we need to understand. And as an auditor, you need to also understand the limitation of each and every initiatives. Okay, so next thing is called as a project objectives and WPS. See, when we execute any project, okay, it's not something, okay, in one go we implement everything. It is not like that. So let's say example, we have website. So we got a project that we need to design the website, simple website. So website is a project for me. Now in website, okay, so website is now become my OBS, object breakdown structure, which identify your, you can say, individual things. Okay, so it identify the individual solution component and their relationship. So as I said, I want to build a website. So under the website, now we have a WBS. Each and every page or each every component. Then under WBS, we have a small other activities. Okay, which I'm going to cover now in the later stage, but right now I'm just telling you on the live, you can say this is called as a work papers or work package we call. Let me write down here. So we called as a work package. So we have website as a OBS, then under which we have a work breakdown structures, and under work breakdown structure, we have a work package. Here we called as a work package. So whenever we executing any kind of a project and all that, this is how we divide the entire activities. Okay, so that's why it's called the WBS is a hierarchical decomposition of a project into smaller manageable component. So OBS identified the individual solutions component and their relationships. As I said, I want to implement online customer service system where the different modules are interact with each other. So we identifying the individual solution component and the relationship. Then we have a WBS, work breakdown structure, which define the tasks need to achieve the project final objective. Like we need to have a sales application development, which is a part of the customer service online. Okay, so we develop the sales application, which structure into sub projects like front end, back end, and database development. Then third, we have a work package, which called as smaller actionable task, which is assigned to a specific team of department. Okay, like we have a web page development, we have a sales interface code development. That is basically part of things. So as I said, this is my customer service online system, under which we have three things. One is called sales application development. We have a user application development, and we have a trainer application development. So these are called as a work breakdown structure. Then under which we have a coding and testing, and that is basically called as a WPS, work package. Sorry, not WPS, that is called as a work package, which is called a smaller actionable task that we need to consider. So takeaways: WBS ensure the structure execution of project task, and each work package is independent measure assigned to the team. And it is very important, we need to track this thing. So we use the project tracking tool, or use of progress tracking and cost estimation scheduling. And we know we have discussed about tools for that. Like for scheduling, we're using PERT, CPM. For cost estimation, we're using FAP and all that. So these are some of the things we are using to execute the project. So now question is how to estimate the project. Confirm in the exam. Okay, so different techniques are used to estimate the project cost. Okay, and because if you don't know the visibility of project cost, it is difficult for me to understand how much resource we need to allocate. So we have a different type of technique for estimating a cost of the project. Yeah, so the first one is called as a analogous estimation, where we use a past project as a reference. So let's take example, I have a CRM implementation. So I have a CRM implementation, okay, of a mid-sized company. So previously it was cost me around $50,000. And now we have a similar project. So new CRM project is also for a small size company. So based on that benchmark, we will give a cost. Okay, $50,000 is a cost. So that is called as an analogous estimating. Second is called as a parametric estimating. Parametric estimating, we use a statistical model based on a historical data. Let's say example, we had a software project which estimate development cost up to 100 per feature. So based on a past data, 200 feature system was estimated up to $20,000. So this is called as a parameter. So use a statistical of everything, and based on that we calculate. The third is called as a bottom-up estimating, where we break down the individual cost and add them up. So example, like in data center, we have a data center upgrade. So costs are calculated based on a server rack, cooling systems, power, network separately, and then total to get the final budget. You will be surprised to know that is one of the best method we call, because we're starting with the bottom top approach. So that is called as a actual cost. And bottom top cost. And last is called as actual cost. Actual cost use a historical cost data for a similar project. So we have a cloud migration project reference. So previous AWS migration that costs us 10,000 for 10 terabytes. So migrating the 15 terabyte is estimated $15,000 based on a past experience. So that is basically called as an actual cost. So analogous estimation and actual cost look same, but thin line difference is analogous estimating only we use as a past project cost as a reference, where the actual cost is basically mean we had a same kind of a project in past. So that's a difference we have. Okay, I repeat again, analogous estimation, where we use a past project cost as a reference. Like if the CRM implementation we have for a mid-sized company, the previous cost of 50,000. So new CRM project for a smaller size company will be different. So but we know we are building CRM, but actual cost mean we had a same project. This was a cost, and now we have a new requirement with a similar kind of project. This is the cost. So that is basically called as an actual cost. So software size estimation also determine the resource allocation, time estimation, and total effort. So that is also important when you're building a customer application. So traditional method is we use single point estimation like line of code, SLOC we called. And modern method we use a multiple parameter like how much cost, how much schedule, and how much quality is there. So based on that we can able to take the functions. So I have some key pointers which I have created here. Just give me a sec. So WBA structure the project into task and deliverables. Cost and estimation, cost and size estimation ensure the realistic planning, and accurate estimation lead to the better budget and control efficiency. That's something you need to know from high level perspective. Okay, so next topic is called as a FPA, function point analysis. Very, very important. Actually, it is a tool. It is a process, not a tool. It is a process used to estimate the complexity and size of the software. Okay. And how? By measuring how much inputs we are entering, how much output we are entering, how many files are there, queries, and all that. So instead of using a line of code, which is a traditional method, now we are using a how a user is interacting with the system, and based on that we do the things. Now why FPA basically used today? So first, as I said, it provides the objective measure of software functionality, and the most important part is it is actually help in you can say in a cost estimation, project planning, productivity measurement, and more important, it is independent of a programming language. So that something is there. So I want to give you one example of that. Okay, so let's say example, this is the application the customer want to build. Okay, so we have some key pointers, like we have a first pointer is called input. Okay, so we have an input. Hypothetical scenario. Okay, so when I say input mean data receive. So when I say data receive by the system like user form, data entry, and all that, then we have an output. Output is like we are processing data, like example, process data. Example like reports, we have emails, we have a confirmation. So that is called as output. Then we have a file. When I say file, files are like what kind of a data stored in the system, like customer database. Then we have a queries. Queries basically mean user initiating requests like search functions and all that. And then we have a external interface like interacting with the other systems, API, and all that. So FPA actually measure these 5 key elements that define the software complexities. Is it clear? So that's a very important. Now from CISA point of view, why it is matter? Because it helped in software project cost estimation, and more important, ensure the accurate software price sizing for budgeting and resource allocation. And it also aid in verifying the vendor deliverables in the outsourced project. So FPA is a reliable standardized method for measuring the software functionality. So any question talking about estimating the complexity and size of the software, answer is basically FPA. Exactly. The answer is basically FPA. Now another important thing I need to understand here is it is more accurate than SLOC, better for business application like ERP, CRM, and more important, it is estimating the cost, productivity, and quality. That's a very important thing. Okay, and another important element we're talking about when you're doing during a development, we can use for project size, we can use to understand the expected cost, and more important, we look for the productivity and quality metrics, how much developers are involved and all that. That's why we say the key takeaway here is to FPA is an indirect way to measure the software size, more useful for the business and help in cost estimation, planning, and productivity tracking. So any question talking about cost estimation of software, planning of software, productivity tracking, measuring the software size and all that, answer is basically FPA, function point analysis. Exactly. So next is called as a software cost estimation. As you say, FPA we are using. So when you're talking about cost estimating of the software project, we have some key cost drivers, including source code language. If I'm writing on Java, Python, .NET. Second is execution time constraint, like real time versus batch processing. Storage and compute cost, because more we write, more data is basically generated, so that application cost is required. Then security and compliance, level of security we are expecting in the application, and how much staff is involved. So these are the actually primary drivers we have, which is used for the, you can say, software cost estimation. But now in the new syllabus of CISA, they also include the machine learning, like machine learning with AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning we have. So artificial intelligence, like think like a human, but to think like a human, they need a data, and for data, they have a machine learning. But for machine learning to compute and process anything, they need a computation cost, cloud storage cost for data sets, and experienced AI engineer. So when you're getting any kind of a projects around machine learning and all that, this cost need to be added. See, machine learning demand a lot of computation, so cloud is the best solution for that. So, but question is basically how much computation costs are involved. So all those things need to be considered here. That's a very important part. Okay, so when you're talking about scheduling the projects and all that, so budgeting covers the cost. That's the most important part. But scheduling ensure the tasks are completed in right order, because if it is running out of time and all that, you need to pay money, right? So two key scheduling factors we have. One is called earliest start date, where we plan tasks in a parallel wherever possible to save time and all that. And second is called as a latest finish date, where we consider total effort, hours, availability, and delay. You can say latest finish date is more like a proper planning. But here what happened is we are using something called techniques called Gantt chart. We're using a technique called CPM, and we're using PERT. So let me repeat again. When I say PERT, which is called program evaluation review technique, it is used for the, when you have a research, okay, or heavy, uncertain projects, So for that we use PERT. Now when it comes to CPM is used for, you can say, deadlines. So when you have a strict deadlines driven project, we use that. And then we're talking about the Gantt chart. Gantt chart is basically for scheduling and tracking. So PERT help in analyzing uncertain IT project timeline. CPM is used for ensuring deadline in a system implementation. Gantt chart help in visualizing the tracking of the IT projects and all that. So if you ask me as a exam perspective, always remember in any given scenario, the objective is to estimate, okay, project durations or timeline. Okay, so answer will be PERT or CPM. So first preference will be we have to give to PERT because it involved a lot of research and everything. In any given scenario where the objective is to monitor the project or track any milestones, then answer will be Gantt chart. And in any case, they're talking on earn value, calculating and all that, then we talk about the EVA. So these things you need to remember. Okay. So if you take an example of the Gantt chart. So Gantt chart is used to track the start and finish date of the task. It is used to identify parallel and sequential activity, and we show the percentage completions and all that. So here you can see one example. We have one task is requirement. Start date day 1 and date is day 5. Dependency is something. UI design. Backend development, testing. So it is like a Gantt chart. Okay, give me the current status where we stand. So according to that, we can able to execute the functions. Okay. So the key pointer is cost budgeting, ensure the proper financial planning for personal, machine, external. Scheduling technique like CPM, PERT, Gantt chart help to sequence the task. Gantt chart provide the visual timeline of project, making track easier. Now second is called as a, so as I said, CPM and PERT. CPM and PERT both are the use technique which we are using to optimizing scheduling, resource allocation and completion timeline. So CPM is the longest path in the project schedule that determine that minimal completion time be required. So let's understand the example. Imagine there is a wedding. Okay, so we have some process. The first is called as a booking the venue. Second is hiring a caterer. Third we called as a designing invitation. Fourth is called as a sending invitation. Fifth is called as a wedding date ceremony. Okay, if any task on the critical path is delayed, the entire wedding will get delayed, right? So CPM, what it does here is CPM is determine the longest path in project scheduling and determining the minimum completion time, and from that point of view we executing the things. So key aspect of CPM is identify the sequence of tasks that must complete on time. Activity on critical path have a zero slacks, there is no room for delay, and it help in determining the earliest possible completion time and support the resource level of efficient utilization. That's why we said if any given time when the objective is to estimate the project duration timeline, the answer should be PERT or CPM. However, the first we have to give to PERT, because PERT talk about the timeline, schedule and everything, because PERT used to estimate certain task, with the CPM used to identify the longest sequence of the task to determine the shortest path and everything. Understood? So that's something we basically takes. So PERT helped in estimation durations. CPM use these estimates to find the critical path. So if I say we have a B, C, D, E example. Okay. So CPM basically ensure that the project is complete in the shortest possible time by managing a critical task. So that's something we are using. So we can use this together. Okay. And as an IS auditor, we are using the PERT for risk-based time estimation, and CPM is basically used to ensure the time delivery in the IT projects. So as I said, PERT, you can see the next one is PERT we have. So PERT is a probabilistic scheduling technique used when task durations are uncertain, and it is estimate the task duration using 3 time estimate like optimize, optimistic, most likely and pessimistic. This is not testable in the exam, it is just for a knowledge I have added. Okay, so optimistic is best case scenario, most realistic is realistic duration, pessimistic is worst case scenarios, which is called longest time, but CPM only work on the shortest. So PERT formula calculate the expected time for each task, and this is how we use. So example, I want to launch a new smartphone. So CPM track the critical task like design, prototyping, testing and marketing, and PERT is basically estimate the uncertain tasks like software debugging, regulatory approval and marketing testing. So we combining the CPM PERT to provide the best project scheduling efficiency. Understood? I repeat again. CPM track the critical tasks like design, prototyping, testing, marketing. Okay. And PERT basically estimate the uncertain tasks like software debugging, regulatory approval and market testing. So we are using this kind of a combination to schedule the projects. So if you can see in the Baiju website, I take this reference. You can see we have a start, we have activities and all. This is an example of CPM. Okay, so we have activity 1, which can be merged with activity 3 and all that. That's something we can take. But if you're taking example of PERT, we calculate the number of hours. You can see in PERT, we document responsible, assigned task and all this. So we're using these numbers and see how can we merge this activity, what activity can be done first. So PERT formula calculate the expected time, because in PERT, we are using these numbers, timeline and all that. So use CPM if your project has a definite timeline like construction, production, manufacture, and use PERT if your project has an uncertain timeline such as software development, R&D, pharma trials, and all that. So difference is that if you can see the reference here, CPM is used for project with predictable duration, where the PERT project with the uncertain duration. Task dependency and scheduling is there, probability based estimation we have. Single fixed estimate per task, 3 estimate we are using here. This is not testable in the exam. This is also not testable in the exam. It is also not testable in the exam. It is just for reference I have basically shared so that you get a better visibility. So now next important thing, we're talking about the auditor perspective. So auditor, when he assess, the PERT estimates are data driven and reflect the, you can say, the realistic approach. That's something we have discussed, and that is why I say the first preference we always give to the PERT. Okay, ensure, and if you can see here also, CPM, predictable, and uncertain is basically PERT. The reason is basically based on the data numbers. So we ensure the variance in estimate is considered in project risk assessment. We also evaluate if the task dependency and risk buffer are well documented, because if there is a possibility it can get failed. We also need to ensure dependencies and milestones are correctly mapped. So we need to know that, okay, if this project is basically down, what is the dependency on other projects? And we also need to check if stakeholders use Gantt chart for tracking. We validate the scheduling methods and make sure we identify the missed dependencies and critical delays. That's something we have to look for. So now next is basically called as a time box. So Timebox Management is a project management technique used to define, deliver software within a fixed time period. Let's take example, you're attending a CISA session. So today I'm going to cover this particular topic in this particular duration. So that is called as a time box. Or imagine there is a mobile web application development team. They're working on the new feature. So they set 2 weeks. They set 2 weeks time box to build and test the feature. Once the time is up, they deliver what is ready instead of extending the deadline. Primary advantage is fast and focus on the quality over the quantity, but disadvantage is sometimes prone to errors. So every activity has a time box activity. Okay. So these are all part of a project scheduling. CPM, PERT, time box, Gantt charts, all are basically part of this activity. So if you can take the reference perspective and all that, time box use in agile and rapid application development. Agile, you know, we have a mini iterations we follow and we share the status weekly and daily meetings. RAD is basically mean, we are running short of times. We have a limited times. With that limited times, we need to develop the applications and all that. So that is called RAD. We have a strict time limit in which we need to develop the application. So that is basically called as a this part. Then we ensure the timely delivery without scope creeping. We cannot execute the scope. The time box basically help to avoid the cost overrun and schedule delays, because we have a fixed timeline in which we need to deliver the applications. And more important is we can able to focus on delivering the key functionality first. We know that, okay, this is something is most important for me. So according to that, I can validate the things, right? So it's very important. If you take example, I want to build IT projects. So UX design will take 2 weeks. Backend will take 4 weeks. So here what happened, this is a task. Okay. So once the time box expires, so work has to be reviewed, adjust and stop. We cannot extend this. So that's why that's a very important part. Hope it is basically clear to everyone. Now, next important part we're talking about is from exam point of view, you should know CPM, PERT, time box management. Okay, so next topic is called as a project execution. So once we define the schedule and all that, after the planning phase, project execution has to be start. And this is where the actual work happen and all the deliverables will be produced. Let's say example of software company, they want to implement a cloud migration project. So during the execution, the team will set up the server, migrate the database, conduct the performance testings, and the PMO ensure, the project management office ensure the tasks are completed as planned. In this particular stage, we have a task need to be executed. We have a quality performance monitoring. We have a stakeholder communications, all need to be communicated. So when you're doing execution, it's very important to control the project. Make sure it should not get delayed. It should not go beyond the budget. Is it clear? So let's say example, there is a data analytic project we have. It's scheduled to take 3 days with 8 hours per day. So if after 1 day, 8 hours, it should be completed, right? If actual effort is 12 hours, so project is overrunning. need a corrective action. That is where the project controlling and monitoring come up. Because in this particular step, we basically track the project progress, we managing a risk and making adjustments. So as an auditor, we have to make sure they have a required document which reflect they have tracking the project progress, managing risk and all that. In this particular stage, we involved one more important activity, which is called as a EVA, Earned Value Analysis. So key monitoring metrics EVA include your budget to date, is it delivered as per spend, estimate to complete, estimate at completion. So all those things need to be considered. And that is part of the EVA, Earned Value Analysis. Exactly. And one more important thing you need to consider in the EVA give you the visibility about, it actually compare the things between the plan work versus actual work. It actually talk about the difference in plan work and actual work, and the cost which is incurred to determine the project is on schedule within the budget. So EVA is a project management technique which is used to measure the project performance and progress in an objective manner. That something is a primary requirement we have. So let's take an example. I'm building a project. So I'm saying one concept called as a plan value, PV, which talk about how much work should have been completed. Okay, then we have a earned value, the actual work completed based on a budget and cost. Okay, or let's take one more example is, we have a total budget of $100,000 that need to be complete a 4-month schedule. 4 months, is it clear? So after 2 months, the team planned to complete the 50% of the work. Okay, which is about $50,000. Okay, so actual work is basically completed is only 40%, which is like 40% is basically the EV. So amount spent so far is 60,000. So all these numbers we are coming with the things. Is it clear? So that is basically called as a requirement of EVA. So EVA is very important. So how the EVA help in CISA and IT security project, it identify budget overrun. It help you to improve the decision making and it enhance the accountability. So that something can be used for the function. And that is also the need. So why this concept matter? Because Timebox Management helps to control the project timeline, project execution, ensure the successful delivery, and more important, project monitoring, prevent the budget and schedule overrun. And all these things are required in the EVA. It's required by the EVA. Is it clear? If I'm having a 4 months of project with 100 million, in 2 months, it should be supposed to invest it 50,000. So we expected 50,000 delivery, but it only got 40,000. So we will get an idea about where we are getting delayed and all that. So all those things, we get the visibility here. Now, the next important thing, when you're talking about controlling a project and all that, another important thing we talk about the resource usage, how much resource has been used, risk management, scope changes, that also need to be tracked because project demand a lot of changes, especially after the agile and all that. So we demand some kind of a changes in everything. So here, the key aspects we have, like whenever there's a scope change, so the new requirement must follow the change request process because we need to track. Otherwise, it's called as scope creep. So any kind of a change is happening, it need to go through a change management process. Second, we have a resource usage, which talk about the actual versus plan spending. So that's something also need to be monitored. And then we talk about the progress monitoring, which talk about track budget, time, and performance metrics. Now, here what happened is we have some risk. If the project doesn't go as per the thing, so there is a risk, which is called management of risk. So risk is uncertain event that may impact the project outcome. Risk is not a confirmed incident. Risk is called as a probability. Okay, in the domain one I discussed now, risk is a probability. So risk is fall into two categories. One is called as a business risk, which is managed by project sponsor, and one is called as a project specific risk managed by project manager, which is also testable in the exam. So when I say business risk, like loss of finance, reputation, impact, and all that, like we took one project, we could not able to deliver our time, it running out of time, and it is lost my customer. That is called business risk. Second is actual operation issue, which is called missed deadline, system failures, and all that. So in that case, it is managed by the project manager. Okay, because there is a missed deadline, system failure, we had a financial loss. That is also possible. So project specific risk is more like a bottom top, and business risk is basically top down. So it's very important that we need to have such kind of a things, and we need to have visibility. One more example I can give you is we have a suppose cloud migration project. Okay, if critical system outage, if any critical system outage occur, it could disrupt the operation. Okay, so project manager mitigate the risk by implementing a backup plan. So that is there. So we assuming all this risk before we start, so that in reality we should not face this, because then it is not a risk, it's an incident. If I lost the money, it's not a risk. You're getting a point. It is become a incident. So that's the reason. So we do this assessment in advanced stage. Now next is called as a project closure. So now once the project is complete, it need to be close, review and handover. So key steps is finalizing the deliverables, ensure all project tasks are completed. Handoff process, which include the KT and documents. Then lesson learned, what we have learned, we have to document. So make sure it should not be repeat again in the future projects. And then we have an official closure, issue the final project notification. As an auditor, I will look for all these documents. Okay. Now why this matter? Because the project controlling is basically prevent the budget and time overrun. That's why we need document. It reduces the failure, ensure the contingency, whatever the learn we have, we can apply the same principles in a new projects. We have a smooth transitioning and it guarantees the success and everything. So what is the auditor role here is that he verify whether project managers are following a defined procedure, like do they have a document scope, resource allocation, resource management, financial control. And the key audit area, like if you're talking about scope management audit, we verify the all scope change, follow change management process. If any changes in the project happen, is it documented? We ensure that unauthorized change are prevented, scope creep. We check whether documentation support the scope approval, like are the scope changes approved and documented. That's something I will definitely look for. That's my minimum necessity. Then I'm doing an audit of resource usage, like is the resource has been utilized properly. So we confirm the budget estimate match with the actual expenditure. If I got a budget of 40,000, is it delivered? We review the EVA reports. Is it aligned with the budget and expenditure? I will also identify any financial mismanagement or inefficiencies, like the resources being allocated as per the approval budget. So that's something we will look for, which is actually a common practice. So in all these things, we verify the integrity and everything. That something is a part of a requirement. Now, next thing is called as risk management audits. So when I'm doing an audit of whether they have did risk management properly, so we verify if risk registers exist. Risk register is a centralized document which document all the risk. If risk is identify, assess and mitigate. Ensure risk treatment plan aligned with the business continuity. So we check whether project risk properly assess and mitigation plan has been documented. So we ask for the logs, which give me visibility about, okay, they did the risk assessment properly before starting of the project. And we also check if the project follow the IT governance frameworks, verify the security policy, is it signed? Does the project comply with the regulatory security standards? So all those things we will basically look for. Now, next thing is called as the auditor role in a project closing. So we validate whether deliverables match with business requirement. We collect the deliverables and compare with the business plan. Is it delivered as per that or not? Because when we're doing an audit on the closure phase and all that, we just verify that whether it met the business objective. Is all projects are deliverable, complete and meeting the acceptance criteria? That's something we can check. We check the handover document audits. Example, like confirm the system ownership has been transferred, checking the email evidence and everything. Ensure that end user trainings and documentation are available. We can also ask for the sample logs, sample emails, deliver artifacts. And we verify security control in place. We ask for the VAPT reports, audit reports, which can give me visibility about the control effectiveness. And we also check if the project has been handed over in a proper documentation timeline. So we will basically ask for this necessary documents. So one thing we need to understand is we also have a lesson learned. See, when we do any activity, okay, we have a lesson learned from there to make sure this should not be happen again in the future. So we have to ensure the lesson learned has been conducted. We ask for the lesson learned reports. Is it sign off? We review the reports of deviations from the original plan. If there is a deviation, what is the action plan they have? So we ask for the action plan. We validate the feedback. We check for the post-review details. And when we're talking about the project closure completions, the most important part, we verify any outstanding issues are not there, which is the biggest risk. Okay. Check whether formal project closure approvals has been done. We ask for the sample email about the approval of the management on the report. And we also see whether they have evidence for that. So all those things we look for when we talking about the validations and everything. It's very important. The documentation should be correct. Okay. Now all this activity, why it matter? Because if you don't do this activity, because auditor act as a quality gatekeeper to ensure that all the IT projects deliver value, remain compliant, and more important, effectively use resources. So their insights helps the organization to improve the IT project success rate. That's why it's play a very important role. So it prevents the financial operation inefficiencies, ensure the projects align with the business objective, verify the mitigations, enhance the future of IT project governance, and more important, as an auditor, as I said, you act like a quality gatekeeper to ensure that IT project deliver value, remain compliant, and effectively used as a resource. That's something we should look for. Okay, so next topic is business case and feasibility analysis. See, when you start any project, like especially SDLC project and all that, the first thing we do the feasibility analysis. So feasibility study typically include, it is like a homework before we're doing a business case, it's a homework. So feasibility study include about the project scope, which clearly define the business problems or opportunity to be addressed. That's a first important thing you need to consider. Second, it evaluate the existing systems, identify the gap or area of improvement which is required. We'd also specify what business and contract and user and technical needs we have that also need to be done. And we also look for the alternative and select the best fit solution. And we also do the total project cost, expected benefits and everything. So all those things is part of feasibility study. And this is something we do before preparing a business case. Okay, it's a very important thing that we consider. And we have a formal validation process to ensure feasibility before project initiation. And based on that only we define the data. Now, what is the role of an auditor here? So auditor will check if the business case metrics is aligned with the enterprise strategy, because based on that they need approval. Cost justification is valid. Alternate solutions, evaluations to confirm feasibility of IT investments, and project documentation for completeness and reasonableness. That's a very important part. And by doing all this activity, the business case and feasibility analysis, the organization can reduce project risk and enhance the IT governance and everything. That's something they look for. And that is something is important part of the project, I believe so. So feasibility analysis is something we do like a homework before we plan any kind of an activity and everything. So now we're going to discuss about SDLC, a structured process by which we build the application in the organization, a systematic process of building an application by using one process which is called SDLC. So it's a structured approach the organization use to plan, develop and maintain information system and software application. It means a process by which we build the application. Now why SDLC is important? Because it provides you structured development process. We can able to facilitate the risk management by implementing control throughout the life cycle, and most important, we can able to improve efficiency and adaptability in the system development. So that's the reason. So what is the role of an auditor here? So if the system development methodology align with the business objective, that is the one primary success we have, because in SDLC, if we can able to address the issues as early as possible, review the things as early as possible, that is a great thing. So system development method align with the business objective. Control should be in place in each phase of SDLC. We need to introduce us business drivers and smart objectives. Smart objectives, specific, measurable, attainable, relative and testable. And documentation risk assessment need to be done in every phase. So well-defined system development methodology ensure the IT project delivered the measurable value. So we have a two type of application. One is called as a organization centric and one is called as an end user. So organization centric is like, there are the two major type of business application we build. One is called as a organization centric, like we're building a CRM, ERP and all that. Or we are building a regulatory compliance system, sales data. So everything will be in one location. That is called as a organization centric. CRM and everything is an example of this one. Second is called as a end user centric, which provide user with a different view of data for performance optimization. Example like decision support system or a geographic information system. So we have a two way to build the application. One is called CRM, ERP, which is basically called as organization centric, and one is basically used like data analytics and all that, decision support systems and all that, that is called as end user system. When we go for any of these applications, we have a two choice. Either we can develop in-house or we can go for the third party. So whenever we look for such kind of a things and all that, we ask a lot of questions to ourselves. So business application project is typically initiated due to the new business opportunity or problem in an existing process. Second is need to align the business application with the industry standard, and more important, we also look for the adoption of new technology efficiently. That something is a need of the systems actually. Now when you're building an applications, so we have a two type of SDLC actually. Actually overall we have two type, but here they talk about three type, but overall we have a two type. One is called as a iterative, and one is called as a non-iterative. So when I say iterative, you're interacting with the customer. Agile is the best example of that. And non-iterative is a traditional method, which is called waterfall. So if I say non-iterative, basically mean if you move from phase 1 to phase 2, you cannot go back. So it's a very strict model. But in the iterative, in every phase, we can have a discussions and everything. So here, the first model that we're talking about here is called as a waterfall, which is a non-iterative method. So we have a phase 1 like requirement understanding, then we document the functional requirement, and then we design, and then we develop. So that is a process we have. So once we are in a requirement phase, we move to the functional requirement. Once we document the functionality, then we design, and then we design, then we develop. We cannot go back. It's a waterfall, fall in one direction. It is best suited for the projects which has a well-defined and stable environment. But challenges basically managing the changes in the requirement, which can be costly, and testing occur late in the process. So if you have a project which are very static requirement, very complex requirement in terms of stability and all that, we can go for this, because in this, until unless you don't complete the first phase, you cannot go to the next phase. So old traditional methodology is actually called as a waterfall. Now second is called as a verification and validation model. So it's an extension of waterfall. And it is best for the small projects so we have this kind of functions. So we have this kind of function verification. So we have design, we validate, we review, we validate. So it is extension of waterfall model with emphasis on testing at each stage. So it's best for small project with a strict requirement, but challenges, inflexibilities, delay due to dependencies, testing and everything. A lot of documentations are involved actually. Now third is called as a third is called as iterative, which is called agile and all that, where in every phase we have an interaction with the customer, get the status, and then we develop. Like, we are in the design stage. Once we get an approval, then we move to the development. If any changes are required, we can go back again. So we follow the iterative, interacting with the customer on a regular basis. So it develops the software in a cycle, refining the product at each steps. It is best for the large scale, evolving the project with changing requirement, but challenges basically require strong project management to avoid scope creep, because we need to track those changes. Now, what is the role of an auditor here? So role of an auditor is to see how the SDLC followed. Is the risk management and process parallelly working? Because according to SDLC, security and risk assessment need to be done parallel in every phase. Okay. Testing and validation practice need to be checked to ensure the software meet the business and security requirement, and we verify by checking what is documented, what is delivered, and logs of the change requests, so by which we can able to track. So by using SDLC model correctly, we can ensure the software development is structured, secure, and aligned with the business goals. That's a very important part we have. Along with that, we also look for how the iterative cycles are documented. We verify with the help of evidence. We look for the change control process to ensure modifications are approved. We look for the risk management practice for assessing and potential vulnerabilities, and we also do the test and validation procedures to confirm the improvement meet the security and performance requirements. So by using this iterative model, the business can build a robust, scalable, well-tested application while adapting to the evolving requirements. So all those things is part of a regular activity. So now what we're going to cover is very, very important for the exam, because you need to know what is happening in each phase. So this is called as a SDLC phase actually. Okay, so first phase called as a feasibility study. We already discussed feasibility study is all about doing an homework. Why we need this software, what is the benefit of this software, what is the problem it going to be addressed. All those things we will do in a feasibility study analysis stage. So if I go back to the slide here, feasibility study, we discuss the same thing. So we define the scope, we do the current analysis, we specify the business, contractual and the technical need. We look for the alternative we have, evaluate the cost benefit, review and approval. So all those things need to be done in the feasibility study. Now, once we're done with the feasibility study, where, we assess the system, business case, readiness of user, maturity, we take the next thing called document the requirement, where we define the problem or business need. We document the functional and quality requirement. Like, okay, I'm building a CRM. Okay. I want the authentication in that. I want authorization in that. I want this function. User should log in and you do this. So after having a interaction with the customer, we document what is a function we need in the application. That will be documented in the requirement stage. Here we have a two type of requirement. One is called functional requirement and one is called non-function. Non-function is a security requirement. Now, based on the requirement, we have a choice. Either we can procure from outside, or we can develop in-house. So here the third phase called software selection and acquisition, where we prepare the RFP to invite the vendor. So question in the exam, in which particular stage we do the RFP. So answer is software selection acquisition. So based on what we need, we document that and we circulate in the market. Or the second option is basically we develop in-house. And for that, first we design the entire application on paper. Okay, the application look like this. The user is going to access this. This is how we provide the login page. Everything we will design and create on a paper, which is called as a data flow diagram. So here we establish the baseline design, system architecture. We incorporate the change control process to prevent the unauthorized, and threat modeling we do in this particular stage. We address maximum security and maximum threats in this particular stage, because by doing a data flow diagramming, we have a user here, user connect with the website. This is how the website look like. Server will provide the page. The pages look like this. You enter the username, you enter the password, that information go to server. So this entire activity we document in a data flow diagram. Okay, so that's what we design, and then we basically go for the configuration. So if we purchase system, we need to prepare the configuration for that. So we configure system parameter, make sure the application that we procure from outside, it should work effectively, it should not backfire. So we need to make sure we properly configure. Or second option is we develop in-house, where we have a source code development, unit testing and all that. Then we have a final testing, where the test cases, actually while doing a development, we write a code, we do the unit testing, and we do the integration testing, we do system testing. And here the test cases what we create, it is based on the functional requirement, because in this particular stage the role of developer is to ensure whatever we're developing, is it meeting the documented requirement that we agreed in the functional requirement. And then when you're doing a final testing and implementation, here we're doing a UAT, where the test case created by the user. Okay, you attending this video, you checking this video, and it met one of your objective is learning. But is it really useful whether you clear the exam? So you will go for the real exam and do the testing, right? So practicing questions is like user testing, but when you go for the real exam or simulated exam, before going for real exam, that is called UAT. So we have a certification accreditation process where the management authorizes the system to be used, and then we have a post implementation review. So all the activity what we do, this is something we do like that, and this is something testable in the exam. One more important thing when you document certification accreditation is verifying the product is called certification based on technical control, but management accepting the product along with the associate report, that is called as an accreditation. Until unless we don't have accreditation, we cannot able to roll out the application to production. And then we have a KT and everything, formal evaluation, lesson learned, ROI, all those things we don't do in a post implementation phase. Now, what is the role of an auditor? So auditor throughout the journey, especially, we will check the feasibility study documentation is there, which giving a enough business justification. We checking whether requirement gathering process has been followed properly. We check whether change control logs has been done properly, testing procedure, post implementation review, that we have a ROI and everything. So all those things we verify in this particular stage. Ultimate goal is to make sure the application has developed as per the predefined requirement. That something is part of our requirement. Okay, that's something important thing. So next is basically called as a agile. Okay, so now we're talking about the next application development methodology, which is called as a Agile Scrum. So Agile Scrum is an example of iterative application development. So far whatever we have discussed was more like a non-iterative, where we have a customer and here we have a vendor. So vendor will understand the requirement, and one random day he will introduce the application. So it will create a lot of gaps, a lot of issues and everything. So to overcome this and all that, we introduce the next concept, which is called Agile Development, which is called as a iterative, where vendor will parallelly discuss every day the status about the project, customer will share his viewpoint, and once they are agree on that, then they move to the next day. So everything is happen parallelly, and according to that we build the application. That's why it is called as a iterative. So Agile is an example of iterative. Okay, Agile is an example of iterative. So Agile development enables the iterative and incremental soft development. It emphasizes the flexibility and quick adaptation to the changes. We use a small time box iteration to deliver working software quickly. And more important, we also encourage the collaboration and continuous feedback. So now what happened, this is not testable in the exam, it is just for references. Let's take an example. We got a project that we need to develop the website. That is a project we have. So first step, we have a product backlog creation, PBC we called, where the product owner define all the project requirement like features, fixes, enhancement, and all are listed and prioritized based on a business value. That's why you're going to select the backlog item from the sprint. So, okay. Then we have a next called Scrum team. So we have a Scrum team. So Scrum team is basically select the item from the product backlog. So this is called as a product backlog. Okay. Which is creation by the product owner. So from the list, we basically pick the task. Okay. And we complete each task in 2 weeks of sprint we call. So Scrum team will select the item from product backlog and they work on that. And team will estimate effort using a story points or sprints we called. Now what happened? They execute the sprint for 2 weeks to 4 weeks. In this entire activity, like today we have decided, okay, this is the website we have. And now we're talking about designing of page, designing of landing page, designing of the course page, registration page. So each and every activity will basically take the 2 weeks of sprint, where we discuss about daily meeting and we have weekly meetings. Now what happened in the this daily meeting, which is called a stand-up meeting, the team will basically answer what we did yesterday, what will I do today, and more important, any roadblock. And then they also have a one sprint review meeting, which is happen every 2 weeks to discuss about, work to the stakeholders, feedback need to be collected. And then we have a next important thing we called as a sprint retrospective, where the team reflect what went well, what can be improved. So this is how the process. So select the backlog item from the sprint, the page and all that. Then team develop the test feature with the sprint. They have a short meeting to track and progress a blocker. They demonstrate the complete works to stakeholder and reflect on the improvement. So this is how the entire activity happened in the case of, you can say, in the case of agile development. So it is very flexible in nature. You can see it is more like a flexible in nature that we actually follow. So if you get a question around which application development methodology encourage the collaboration, continuous feedback, and each and every activity we have a time box functions and all that, the answer is basically Agile Scrum. Now as a CISA candidate, okay, Agile focus on adaptive planning and early delivery. So biggest reason of going for the Agile is like the continuous delivery. Okay, that's something is there. And there is a possibility that they might ask you the question on Agile Manifesto. Exactly. So there might be a question where they can ask you about Agile Manifesto. So biggest reason of going for the Agile is they promote the software over the documentations. That something is the primary need they have. So I will show you one example how it look like. So let's say example, this is called as a Agile Manifesto. Okay. So they have some requirement like individual and interaction over process and tool. Okay. Their primary objective is to working on the products over the comprehensive documentation. They promote customer collaboration over the contract negotiation, responsible for changes. So moral of the story is that they actually promote the software than product documentation, fast delivery, higher flexibility, and better collaboration. That's the biggest parameter we are talking about Agile. And this is something you need to know. So the plan only to have a next iteration. It use the adaptive approach to prioritize evolving requirement. It focus on incremental development because they work slowly and all that, and they does not emphasize rigid documentation, but rather team collaboration. So any question about team collaboration over documentation, working product over the process tool, so answer is basically Agile. The biggest reason of going for the Agile is rapid delivery of application. So how the IS auditor will see this perspective is, we have to see how the Agile methodology ensures security compliance. Second is, if Agile frequent testing is including secure testing, we look for the artifacts. How Agile handle the risk management and documentation, and more important, the effectiveness of the Agile team collaboration. Like we look for the meeting of minutes records and everything. That something is part of a checking. That's something we have to check. The next topic is called as a reverse engineering. Very, very important for the exam. So reverse engineering is what? So let's say example, there is already an application We read the code, we understand the system function, and we try to create the better version of that. So that is called as a reverse engineering. So reverse engineering help in analyzing and understanding how the application system function, so that you can able to build the similar application, or you can build the better application in the later stage. So it can use to develop a similar system and improve the existing one. And it is useful in the case of modernizing your legacy applications and all that. So from the exam point of view, what you need to know is, so as I said, let's take a first example. So there is already an open source application we have. So we understand the functionality of the open source, we understand the pattern, everything. And based on that, we create a new version of an application. So that is called as a reverse engineering. Okay, understand the current pattern, source code and all that, and recreate the new version of an application. Now, concern here is that reverse engineering can be performed using a decompiling. So decompiling the code, like we first decompile the code, analyze the structure and functionality, which give me reference. Second is we do black box testing. Black box testing in where we have a zero information about things, but we're talking about from external perspective. Third is we extracting, reusing a design component. So I found one software and it has one component. I'm reusing the component in my application, new application. So I'm extracting and reusing design component. And more important, we identifying the security flow, enhance the security feature. Actually, we can do both type of testing, black box and white box. Black box means we have a zero information, so we do from external, and white box testing where we analyze the code and restructure the component. Okay, that's why I call black box testing, to understand the application behavior so we can make it better. Okay. So now what is the role of an auditor? The first thing is that we have to see if I'm re-engineering any application, is it part of the license? If it's not, it's a breach. Example, I'm checking this application, I'm checking the code, I'm planning to use this component in my new application. But first I have to check, is this comply with the agreement? Like, can I use that? And if not, it is the biggest non-compliance. Second is risk of intellectual property violation. As I said, knowingly or unknowingly, I'm using someone's component in my product. So I have to take a permissions. Third is how security will be identified, because see, this is the product we had. It has a module, it has a malware, or it has a vulnerability. I'm going to reuse this same module in my existing software. So we bring the same vulnerability here. And third is if code reusability process improvement align with the compliance standards. So all those things we need to have. Okay, so next topic is called as the DevSecOps. First of all, we discuss about DevOps. So what happened is, DevOps is basically introduced for the rapid delivery of application. DevOps was introduced to manage the complex application. So here what happened, we have a development team and here we have a production team or operation team. So there is a concept is called as a CI/CD, CI and CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. So in DevOps, what happened is the development team and operation team are working together. So they build a module, and then release the module through this pipeline. And this operation team will organize all this in a particular sequence by which we can able to run the application. So instead of like a traditional waterfall method where we take the entire process, we validate everything, and then we release the application, it is not like that here. In this process, we are not using the same concept actually. So here what happened, we build module by module. Okay. We build module by module, and based on that, we release the application version. So here what happened is we build the first module for the application, we release, we launch the second version of a module, we release, we build the third version of application, we release. So here what are we building module by module, and we release the module to the operation team, and they basically organizing this model to run the application. That is called as a DevOps. So DevOps introduced one security concern which was not there in a traditional SDLC, which is called lack of segregation duty. Because at least in the waterfall, we have a separate development environment and we have a production environment, which is clearly segregated. But here the development and operations are working together. That is why it is called as a collaborative approach between the developer and IT operation team to automate, accelerate, and more important, improve the software delivery through the continuous integration and deployment. And some principles which DevSecOps or DevOps follow is automations they follow. Second is continuous integration and continuous delivery they follow. They follow the collaborations and more important monitoring feedback. So that something is the core principle the DevOps follow. Now adding a security into that become a DevSecOps, which incorporates security by design. Is it clear? So DevSecOps basically mean if you're releasing this code module to module, parallelly add security into that here. So that is called as a DevSecOps. So DevSecOps incorporate security by design in development, reduce the operation silos, enhance the automation, and improve the deployment speed, security, and efficiency. The biggest reason of going for DevOps is that deployment speed. See, I'll tell you one more thing. See, this is your development, this is your operation. Okay, so when you're releasing module by module, let's say example, you release 3 modules. This module is now running in the operation. Now after that 4th module, when you release that creatable, so we know this module we have to replace. Is it clear? And one more reason of using a DevSecOps parallelly with that, we call it as a shift left security. Shift left security. Shift left security. What does the meaning mean? It means introduce security as early as possible instead of doing at the later stage. So the biggest reason of going for the DevOps and DevSecOps is the early integration of the soft security and continuous delivery of applications. So that something is part of a requirement. So we have some concerns. So as an auditor, we have to see this concern that something is part of a requirement. Example like the first is called segregation duty. So the DevOps introduced one biggest concern which was not there in traditional SDLC, which is called SOD. So we have to see proper SOD need to be maintained. Second is security need to be integrated continuously and proactive. That's another important thing. Automatic security testing need to be done. And make sure we parallelly follow the risk management practice. That's something we can validate. So auditor is, you have to review security control embedded in the development pipeline. So we check the deliverables. We see the security bit design approvals, artifacts and everything. Second is we also look for the automations, how the automation impact the compliance and risk management. The third, the effectiveness of security testing in DevSecOps lifecycle, where we check the logs and everything and see the presence of security testing methodology in the DevSecOps. And make sure any kind of a changes are there, it does follow the access management change control process. So we look for the logs which can give the idea about the changes are introduced in an authorized manner. That something is part of a requirement. So next topic is called as a business process reengineering. Now what is this business process reengineering? Let's take an example. Before COVID, I was doing a lot of classroom training. Hypothetical scenario, I'm doing a lot of classroom training. As the COVID hit, definitely we have to change the business process. We have to change the business parameters because we cannot do the classroom training in a COVID. So what is the next thing? And this is where we introduce a new concept, which is called BPR. So BPR is called as a business process reengineering, where we restructure the business, identify the bottleneck. And we believe that, okay, by doing an online training will give you better visibility. And this is a live example of the BPR, business process reengineering. So it is a structured process where we have a process decompositions, like breaking down the process into smaller unit. We redesign and optimize the workflow, removing all the inefficiencies. We look for the automation, like reduce the manual intervention, and more important, we look for the continuous improvement. So ultimate goal, by changing the business process and all that, we're trying to create a value. Same like what I did, I moved from the classroom training to the online training. We moved from a class consulting to the online consulting. We restructure the business process to make more better business values and everything. That is called as a BPR. Now don't get confused with reverse engineering. See, reverse engineering is all about identify the current application, code, module, and reuse a module in the new application. So auditor perspective is that if BPR align with the business goals and objective, auditor need to check how the process controls and risk management are appropriate, the impact of automations and ERP integration, and more important, do we maintain the proper documentation? That something is part of a requirement. So next topic is called as a information system implementation, which is the second part of the domain 3. Domain 3 part 1 talk about application development and all that, and now we're talking about once we build the application, we have to do proper testing, and testing is part of information system implementation. So in this section, the first thing we talk about, we're preparing a system to be implemented. So when we implementing any system, which is an application, anything, we do a lot of assessments. So why implementation testing is important? Because we need to ensure the system operate as intended. Because see, what happened is according to SDLC. Okay, so let me take that diagram again so you get a better visibility. Give me a second. Yeah, so this is the SDLC. So here you can see the first step was feasibility study. we do the analysis and everything, business benefit, then we do requirement definition, then we have a software selection acquisition, then we design, and then we have a next which is called as this one. Give me a second. Configuration, development, final testing and implementation. Now here is a catch. There is a phase called as a requirement where we document the requirement, and based on a requirement, when we're doing a development, during that time we create a test cases, because our first primary goal is to make sure whatever the application has been developed, okay, is it basically working as per the documented, which is called verification. See, I have an application, does it have all the function things which is agreed in the functional requirement? That's called verification. And second is when it is basically deployed, okay, then the user will do the testing, client will do the testing, they create their own test case, which is called as a validation. See, my training content is good, that's a verification, but you pass this exam, that's a validation. So when you're talking about implementation, okay, so we have to ensure system operate as intended to go, and that is only possible with the help of testing. So one testing we do during a time of development, and one is basically during a UAT. So during a development, the test cases that we create, it is created based on the functional requirement that we agreed. Like this is the function we need in the application, and developers will use this reference parameter, and based on that create test cases and test the application. But user will create his own test cases and do the testing, because that is something we're talking about here is as intended before going live. So we identify all the defects that could impact the performance security, and we provide the stakeholder confidence, the system meet the requirement. So we carry some kind of a testing, and this is testing testable in the exam. Okay. So as an IS auditor, you should understand different type of testing. The first testing is called unit testing. So what happened during a development stage? So we build module by module. This is the modules. Okay. So we have a module 1, we have a module 2, we have a module 3, we have a module 4, we have a module 5, we have a module 6, we have a module 7, we have a module 8. So we have module by module, and we test these modules independently. That is called as a unit testing. So any question talking about testing individual module for functionality, answer is unit testing, and this is something we perform in the development stage. Then we have a integration testing. Integration testing is we are introducing the APIs here. We are introducing the APIs by which we make sure the data can be passed correctly from one module to other module. So that is why we're testing the interface. That is called as a integration testing. So we ensure the multiple components interact correctly. That something is called as a integration testing, and API testing is part of the integration testing only. Then we do the another testing which is called as a system testing, where we verify the entire system functionality. But we do a lot of checks on that. One is called recovery testing, where we do the aggressive activities which can be able to recover the system from failure, and by doing this we're checking actually the resiliency. It is same like getting a tight slap from the dad and mom and then you stand there. So that is called recovery. Same here, we do the aggressive attacks, aggressive load on the systems to see how soon they can able to recover. Then we do the overall security testing, which is verify the control effectiveness. That something is part of a requirement. Then we do the load testing. Load testing is we generate a lot of load on the server to see how much he can able to handle. So load testing and volume testing difference is that load testing performance under the peak usage. It means when it reach maximum, how it handle the request. How much amount of data it can handle, that is come under the volume. And stress testing is basically all about application performance under the extreme condition. So I will give an example, okay, how it works. Let's take example. This is the website. Okay, so we have a user, similar we have 1,000 users. They basically setting up the connection with the web server. Okay, so we will verify how the system perform under the expected user load. So that is called as a user testing. So we're simulating 1,000 users shopping on a website at the same time. Second is called as a volume testing. Volume testing tests the system behavior with a large amount of data. Let's say example, when I'm uploading, as a one user, I'm uploading a 1 million products record to see if database can handle that or not. That is called volume. So difference is here is user and there's the data. Third is called as a stress testing. Stress testing is push the system beyond its limit. So now we're limiting, so we have a limit of 1,000, but we're limiting 1,000 users. We're limiting 10,000 users at once to see if the website can be crashed or not. At any point of time, the website is basically crashed. It means we need to improve from this particular vertical. So that is basically called as a stress testing. So simple is load testing is a normal traffic simulation. Volume testing, large data handling. Stress testing, extreme condition to check the system breakdown. So all those things we validate here. And then we basically have another important test, which is called performance testing, which is benchmarking. And we have final acceptance testing. This is your UAT, where the test case is created by user to check whether it is meeting their objective and all that, and ensure the system is ready for production. And one more important thing, your test environment should be identical to your production environment. If it does not have, then what happened? We would build some application or test environment and it failed miserably in the production. So make sure your test environment should be identical to your production environment. That's something is a very, very important part you need to consider. Another testing we basically do is alpha testing and beta testing. So alpha testing performed by developer and beta testing performed by the user. We also have a pilot testing where we do the early testing with basic functionality. We also have a white box and black box. So when you have access to source code, you have access to the internal logics, have an end-to-end visibility, that is called white box, where we have a zero information about target and testing from externally, that is called as a black box. So it is same like, I'm testing my site. They just give me URL. So I'm doing the test from external to internal. So that is called black box. But I have access source code. I have access to logic. I'm reading the code. I'm identifying bug by reading a code. That is called as a white box testing. Is it clear? So that's something we need to have. Then we have a function testing where we check whether it met the user requirement. We also have one more testing, which is called as a regression testing. Very, very important for the exam. Let me explain you how. So this is my application. Okay. So I have an application. We discovered some vulnerability in the application. So we have patched that application. So regression testing check two things to ensure the patch has addressed the error correctly and application working fine. Second is that after deploying the patch, the application is still working properly with other modules. So that is basically called as a regression testing. So regression testing basically means we patch the system and we retest the application with the same error to check if the patch has addressed the error correctly or not. Okay, so we use that error as a test. And second is by doing this test, we ensure the application is working still fine with the other application. Because if you see in the past, a lot of time happens when you're introducing some new updates and all that, application crash or application stop communicating with other. And the best example is CrowdStrike. So regression testing we do mostly in the case of post patch management, change management, just to ensure whatever the changes we introduce in the system, it is working effectively. Then we have a parallel testing where we compare old and new system for consistency. And then we have a sociability testing to ensure new system work with the existing module. So sometime what happened, you're introducing some new modules and all that. And after that application failed. See, it is not a regression, but here what happened, we're just checking an integration parameter and all that. When you're introducing new model, is it working with the existing effectively and all that? That's something we have to check. So what is the role of an auditor? That's a question. So we have to check, is the test plan aligned with the business requirement? For that, we need to obtain the test plan first, check the test report and see whether it is aligned with the test plan. Second is all the test results are documented, issue has been resolved. We verify with the output. We check in the log security control has been tested. And more important, we also verify the system failures and recovery mechanism are been tested thoroughly, because that's something trigger the availability perspective. Another important testing which is testable in the exam is QAT and UAT. See, QAT, quality assurance testing, ensure the system meet the technical specification, and this is more like a verification actually. So we have a steps called, first step is called understand the requirement of a customer. Then we document the requirement what we need in the application. Then we design the application, and then we do development, and then we do the testing. And then we do the implementation. This is the common SDLC process we have. Okay. So in waterfall, we go in one go. In agile, we follow this as a mini iteration cycle. So what happen is when we're talking about technical specification, so during the second stage, we document this is the function I need in the application. Okay. So during a development, we develop the application based on function. So we have to make sure is still the application developed as per the document requirement. That comes under the QAT. So QAT ensures the system meet the technical specification. But on the other side, UAT is done by the user to check whether application met my user objective or not. So QAT performed by the IT team. It is focused on verifying system technical specification, ensure proper coding, logic and functionality has been done. And we have a minimal end user participations and all that. That's something done by the QAT. Then UAT is performed by the end user, ensure system meet the business requirement. we involve the real life scenarios, and we ensure system integration into the business process. That's something's part of the QAT and UAT. So QAT is performed by the IT team and UAT performed by the business team. QAT is like a verification and UAT is more like a validation. So the question is now, what is the role of an auditor? So auditor verify the UAT, QAT are distinctly, properly conducted, independent. Test results are documented, sign-off should be there, and assess the security control and confirm the UAT validated system readiness before deployment. So what is called as software testing in Azure? So why software testing is important? So the first thing is that we need to ensure the software function correctly and meet the business need. We need to identify defects early, reducing cost and time to fix the issue. And more important, we improve the reliability, security, and performance. That something is basically the end goal we have. Then when you're talking about software testing. So ultimate goal of software testing is to make sure the application is working as per what is documented. Okay, so now we have a software testing approach. So there's a two type of software testing approach we have. The first is called as a bottom up. See, when you're talking about bottom up actually start from the lower level unit. So we have a units, then we have a integrations, we have a system, and then we have a application. So we start with the individual modules, start with the lower level units, and then we move up in the higher component. Like we're using a drivers to simulate the missing upper modules. And the benefit of doing a bottom up testing is to help in testing the core functionality. Okay, and it is best for a backend heavy applications. So that is basically called as a bottom up testing. Next is called as a top down testing. Start with the higher level, which is called UI. So we start from the UI level. Okay, so we have a user interface. We start from user interface and then slowly and gradually we move to the modules. So by doing a top down testing, it help in early detection of major system issues like UE responsive. Or let's say example, we're testing a main dashboard of e-commerce site first. Okay, while actual payment processing is simulated using a suburb. So it is application with UX standards and all that, we use that. So that is basically called as a top-down testing. So both testing has their own perspective. It's all about how you basically take the calls. Okay, so if you talk about bottom-up testing for backend systems, top-down is basically start the UI and UX heavy applications. So sometimes we basically use a combination of both. So that's something is part of the testing approach. So as an IS auditor, we need to ensure all test plans and results are documented. We need to verify the defects and categories are resolved, and we can verify with the help of logs and everything. We have to confirm the critical functionality are validated, and how to check that. We check the logs of successful application deliveries and validate whether it works, and make sure we see the evidence of the security controls. So that something is part of the parameter. Next is called as a data integrity testing, which is a very important topic in database. Data integrity testing is all about when you're writing data to the database tables and all that, we have to maintain the accuracy, completeness, and consistency of data. So let's say example, this is my database. The name of the database is InfoSec Train. And in the InfoSec Train database, we have a multiple tables. So these are called as a table 1, table 2, and table 3. Table 1 maintain one employee information, table 2 maintain one employee information, table 3 maintain one employee information. So we write a lot of transactions into the tables, and a group of tables is called as a database. We do regular testing on that. Okay, so that is testing called data integrity testing. So which ensure the accuracy, completeness, consistency of data. And ultimate goal of data integrity testing is to prevent the unauthorized change which is happen in the stored information, and we maintain the data quality in database systems and transactions. So we do regular testing like that. So when you're talking about this testing part, we have a two type of testing. One is called as a relational integrity test. Now what is relational integrity test? So let's understand with the example. This is my restaurant. Okay, imagine you own a restaurant. And you have one concept called digital order management system, DOMS, that keep track of customers, orders, and payment. We receive every day a lot of transactions. So first thing what I need to check is that whatever the transaction is happening, is it recording correctly and completely? Two things are there, correctly and completely. So when I say relational integrity, Okay, so let's say example, there is a customer who placed order for two pizza. Okay, and one pasta. Two pizza, one pasta. But the system mistakenly saved two pasta and one pizza. So relationship integrity test would flag this as a incorrect because the order or the entered order does not match what the customer has basically requested. So it basically prevent incorrect or missing data. Now second test is called as a referential integrity test, which maintain the relationship between the linking of the data. So in database, what happened is we used to have a two type of key, primary key and foreign key. So let's say example, this is my table. Okay, so here we have an employee ID 121, name is Prabh, class is CISA. We have another called as a trainer ID 727, trainer name is Karan, and student is, instead of giving a student name, they give a student ID 121. So student 121 is basically the belong to Prabh. So primary key is unique in the entire table. The same primary key, if I use another table, that is called as a foreign key. So referential integrity test ensure the validation between the two tables or link between the multiple tables. So this ensure all related records match correctly across different table. That something is a priority we have. So now let's say example, there is a customer. Okay, so we have a customer. So his customer ID is basically 123, and he placed the order, which is called order ID is 456, and he made the payment ID, which is called 789. Customer ID is 123, order ID is 456, and 789 is basically payment ID. If system allow deleting a customer ID, okay, which is called 123, but the related order and payment record still exists, so it break the referential integrity. So referential integrity test would prevent system from deleting the customer until all related orders and payments are removed. So it basically prevent orphan records, okay, like order without customer, payment without transaction, and all that. So both are the testing we do in the database. Exactly. So both testing we do on a same down database. So this is the called as a two type of integrity test we have. So relational integrity ensure each record is accurate, and referential integrity ensure the link data stay connected and they remain linked to the other tables. So by this we can ensure the complete accuracy, completeness, and transaction. So that something is part of the function. That's why if you can see here, I mentioned the same statement: ensure link data stay connected, ensure each record is basically accurate. Now next thing is basically called as an asset. See, in database, when you do transaction, okay, your transaction should meet the asset principle. Okay, if doesn't meet the asset principle, they will drop the transaction. I don't know whether notice when you make some payments and all that, sometime when you reach payment gateway, it takes some time. It still say loading. At one point in time, what happened is the payment get failed. Oh, sorry, product has been booked, but product was not delivered. It doesn't give you confirmation, but payment was directed, right? But after 24 hours, the payment will be reflected back in your account. Because when you're doing any transaction, your transaction should meet the asset principle. And who monitor in the database, there's a concept is called as a OLTP, online transaction processing. So whenever in transaction happen, OLTP monitor the transaction for asset principle. So one of the principle of asset is called atomicity. Atomicity means transaction either fully complete or rollback. Okay, I'll give an example. Okay. So during any online meeting and all that, when you miss some statement, like, there's a latency and all that, what you say? Can you repeat again? Because you have a simple logic, either in one go he should say, and if there is an interruption, he should again start from where he started. Understood? So same happened with atomicity. Atomicity is called as a all or nothing. All or nothing. So if something failed midway, the system will be rolled back to the previous state. So like example, you have requested $10,000. Okay, so you have requested 10,000 withdrawal. So ATM debited the amount from your account but failed to dispense the cash due to the machine error. Is it clear? So atomicity is basically ensure the transactions roll back, so your money is not detected without cash being dispensed. So it prevents the partial transaction. So that is the first principle we check. Second is called as a consistency. Consistency basically means keep the system is in a valid state before and after execution. So let's say example, from my account 1, I withdraw 10,000. Balance left is 90,000. Okay. And I'm transferring the money to account 2. It currently has a 40,000. So by adding 10,000, it should be 50,000. 50,000 has been added, but 1 lakh still maintain here. So there's the consistency issue. So before withdrawal, your account balance was 1 lakh. After successful withdrawal, your balance is 90, right? So if system crash midway, the consistency ensure that no incorrect balance are stored. So it prevents the system error and maintain the valid record. Another way we can say it should follow the proper separation of duty. If some money was deducted from my account because it's going to be debited in your account, it should be reflect account status properly. Is it clear? Both sides, it should show the same value. 10,000 added from it, 10,000 added in your account. So that something is part of the consistency. Third is called as a isolation. Isolation means the transactions should be run independently without affecting other. So example, you and another customer both trying to withdraw 10,000 from the same ATM. So isolation ensure your transaction does not interfere with other. So we prevent the mix up. And last is called as the durability. Once any transaction happen, you should get a delivery receipt. If you get a delivery receipt, it means the transaction is successful. Is it clear? That's why in some restaurants, you can see now, if you don't receive the bills, consider this as a free order. So each transaction should meet all the 4 principles, which is called as an acid test. That's why as an IS auditor, you should verify control for relational and referential integrity. We have to assess whether database transaction followed the acid principle correctly. Check for data corruptions and ensure the regular integrity checks for implemented things. Next is called as an application system testing method. So we have to test the application system because we need to ensure the program logic and functionality working correctly. We identify potential errors and security risks, so we can address this with the help of testing, and we can confirm that we can comply with the business and security controls. Okay, so we have a different type of application system testing method. So first is called as a parallel, which is a very expensive method. So here what happened, we have the new system which I want to do the transition, and we have already an old system which is running. So organization will run both old and new system at the same time and processing a real transaction actually in both. This allows the validation of new system before retiring the old one. Let's take an example or imagine you have a bank. So in the bank, you're upgrading a core banking system. You know, the core banking system is very critical. So this is the banking system we have, and this is a new we have implemented, but it is not rolled out in the production, but we're running both parallelly. So we do the transition in both. So during this transition, both old and new systems process transactions simultaneously for a given month. If the new system show error, the bank can still rely on the old system. So advantage is basically accurate. By comparing the old and new systems, reduce the risk before retiring old system. But the problem is that it's very expensive because we need to maintain both systems on the same time, and running both systems double the workload. So that is called as a parallel. So if you're looking for safety side and all, that is the best method. Second is called as a ITF, integration testing facility. Any question in the exam talking about which type of testing use fictitious test database, answer is ITF. So it creates a fictitious test database inside the live production system. And by this, we can allow the continuous testing without disrupting a real business operation. So let's take a same example is we have a hospital billing system, HBS. So they introduce one dummy patient data. They introduce one dummy patient data or dummy patient in the database. So system will process fake patient record alongside with the real one to test if billing calculations are correct. Since the data is isolated, it does not interfere with the real patient record. So advantage, we have a continuous testing because regularly we can do this. We can have early detection of system error, and we don't need to have 2 systems parallelly. But make sure we need to have a careful planning to ensure test results need to be validated, and it can be complex. You have to make sure we should have a proper strict controls. So summary is that parallel operation run both and new. ITF run only one. Parallel is expensive. ITF is less cost effective, but we are using one dummy transaction, the existing one. So isolation is the biggest concern we have. So as an auditor, We need to ensure the test plans cover all the critical business process, verify whether test data is isolated, assess if parallel operations testing is feasible, and more important, review the effectiveness of the automate tools. So the question is why testing is critical. That's a question. So we validate the user requirement before system deployment. We need to ensure internal controls function as intended, detect the security operational error before it's actually go for the live. That's something we have to look for, because if you don't do that, it's a problem. So the problem here is that, as a CISA exam tips, so we need to ensure the test plan cover all the system requirement, because based on test plan only we do the testing. Verify user participation like test scenario sign off. Do we have a sign off records? Check for rerun test scenarios to work effectively. And we also have a control verification, like we reconcile the total controls, convert data, we verify the error reports, and more important, we confirm the cyclic processing accuracy, which is used for the integrity check. Next important thing, the IS auditor role in the different testing approach. So first is called as a UAT. During that time, we verify the access test to ensure system security function correctly. Mean this is your test environment, this is a production environment. Make sure we should have a clear segregation between that. We have to review parallel testing consistency. UAT approved version is delivered. So that's something we can verify. As an IS auditor, we will interview the end user to check that understanding of the procedure is done correctly. We need to ensure system and the documentation accuracy is there, sign off is properly maintained, confirm the results are properly recorded, compare with the planning and all that, and validate the legacy system transition plan is exist or not. We can ask for the email evidences as approval. And doing all this, the key objectives: develop the structure support, ensure defined roles, training data and all that. That's something is part of a requirement. Now, next important thing we look for is IS auditor role in the information system testing in terms of test. See, we need to ensure the requirements are met and system function correctly. That is the ultimate goal. So we have some tasks for that, like we review the test plan. That is the first thing we have to do. Just checking the completeness and user participation, reconcile the control totals, verify the error reports, check the cyclic processing, and more important, validate the accuracy. So all those things are very important, because that's how you drive the functions and everything. Because if you don't do that activity, it's a problem. Now, why the implementation is important and critical when you're doing the transitions and all that? Because smooth transition from legacy to new system is always a challenge. So we need to minimize the disruptions during a deployment, and we need to confirm system meet the user security requirement. That is why the role of auditor is very important in the implementation stage. So what he do is he verify the sign off is there or not. Okay, he ensure the file system verification is completed. So we check the deliverables and everything. And we check is the training has been delivered. So we ask for the sent emails or KT transfer documents. So that's something is part of implementation review. Then we have a testing and deployment validation, where we check the test plan for completeness, unit integration test. We validate approved system versions are implemented. We ensure the change control process are followed during our implementation. Along with that, we also have a security data migration controls, where we verify the user access controls are properly set, ensure data migrations maintain integrity, and more important, we also look, do they have a fallback strategy? Because tomorrow if application doesn't work, do they have a fallback process? So that's something we have to validate. Along with that, as an auditor, we will check is the interview of end users, check for the new systems has been done. Ensure systems and end user documentation is accurate, because validation is very important. We verify the parallel testing results is done properly to check the consistency, and confirm the legal systems transition plan exists, so that they can minimize the downtime and all that. All this activity we are doing to make sure when we having implementation, it should be done in an effective manner. That something is the ultimate goal we have. So key objective here is to develop the structure support system, and for that we're doing an audit. Provide a single contact point for incident resolutions. That's why we're checking all the SOPs and everything, and roles has to be defined. That's a very important part of the function. Okay, so next topic is called as a configuration management, or the role of an auditor in the service management. So we have a different type of functions in service management, like configuration management, change management, release management, and all that. They all are working together to provide the common support. Let me explain you how. Let's say example, we have a data center. Here we have a server, we have an application, we have data and everything. Okay, now tomorrow any issue comes in this, we have a ID team who handle this. But there's no centralized management system by which we can able to track the IT, because tomorrow this is something is using and hosting some Zoom application here. And tomorrow if Zoom is basically down, we have to raise a ticketing system by which we can able to manage the Zoom. That's how the process works. So we need to introduce some kind of a service management function by which we need to track this IT, track these functions. And that is why it is called a service management function. So here one of the process we are using is configuration management. Why? Let's say example, we have a system A, we have a system B, we have a system C, and we have a system D. Similar, we have 1,000 systems, or we have 100 systems. So each and every systems, if it's running with a different functionality, it is difficult to manage that. Agree? Tomorrow any issue happen, like CrowdStrike kind of an incident happen, we need to identify which system running with that configuration. So we have to remove the file. So to bring everyone on the same page, to provide the uniformity, we follow one process which is called configuration management process. So with the help of configuration management process, all the systems running are same configurations. So when they're running a same configuration, all this information stored in the CMDB, configuration management database. So if tomorrow any kind of a changes we required, with the help of configuration management database, we can able to manage the changes easily in the systems. Tomorrow if you want to deploy any kind of a patches, I know these are the set of systems which running with a common configuration. So it is easy to deploy the patches. So configuration management provide the uniformity. Then there is another concept, is called release management. So if you're introducing any patches and all that, through the release management only we introduce those patches to make sure it should not have any downtime. But there is a one process which is closely work with configuration management, which is called as a change management. Okay, tomorrow I want some changes. Tomorrow I want some changes in the B system. I want some changes in a C system. So it will be change, goes through the change management process. Ultimate goal of change management process is to ensure whatever the changes we are introducing, it should be introduced in an authorized manner. So we verify the change control policies. We ensure we have a formal change management process by which we introducing the changes. So let's take an example. I'm conducting one session. Okay, so this is the company called ABC, and this is me who's sitting at home. And from there we're doing an online training. So Friday we're doing a test trial because next Monday we have a session. So participant of ABC unable to join the Zoom. And I raised this concern with L&D. L&D raised the concern with IT. IT got to know it's a security issue. Security got to know this is a change in the firewall. So they have to raise the request, because this is the one state of configuration running in the enterprise. Now, if you want to modify the configuration, they need to raise a change request. So tomorrow, any kind of a changes we are introducing, we can able to track and document, because sometimes some changes can backfire. So that is why, because change management process itself is part of an administrative control. So that's why we say if you want to modify the configuration, it need to go through a change management process. And that is something is a part of the requirement. That's why as an auditor, I will verify change control policies are there. I will verify with the help of change log, did they follow change process effectively? We review the configuration baseline for track the system modification. Along with that, we have a release management testing, like we validate the release testing, which is follow the structure plan. We confirm the rollback plan should be exist, and we ensure the CMDB are basically used. So one thing we need to understand here is we have to review if configuration control protect the system integrity. We have to assess if access controls are enforced during a release management. We ensure that audit trails logs are maintained for all system changes. That something is part of a requirement. So as an auditor, we verify system updates do not impact production environment. We check the maintenance requests are documented. We ensure another system changes are prevented, and we confirm the IT team follow the structure change approval process. And that's why the key objective is to ensure the consistency and reliability. Because when you're having a configuration management process, you're promoting the consistency. We ensure the security controls system and support the regulatory compliance requirement. Next is basically called as a data migration. So when you build a new system, you need to do the data migration also. So data migration itself is a very critical task. Example, like this is the old application, you build a new application, you want to migrate the data. So data migration is there. So what is data migration? And why data migration is important? Because data integrity, accuracy, consistency is there. and we have to support the seamless migration from legacy to the new systems. Sometimes migrations can lead to the operation issue, so we have to address those operation risks thoroughly to check for the incorrect or lost data. So as a CISA exam, migration planning and risk assessment is very important. So we need to identify data to be migrated, establish the rollback plan, and ensure the data transformation method maintain the original integrity. Second thing, we look for the testing. So we conduct the test migrations in a control environment. We verify the source to target the data mapping, and we look for the consistency. If my new data have a particular format, old data have a particular format, the old new data should be in the same format, then only you can able to do the transition. Example, my old database or the application maintain the data in this format. Example, so they maintain the information in this format like customer ID, change ID, and address. So my new data should be in the same format, then only we can able to merge. So we have to see the consistency check, record count, control total. We do the data integration testing and everything. That is something is part of a requirement. And along with that, we ensure the security and compliance oversight to ensure the data confidentiality, validate the access controls, confirm audit trails and logs are maintained for traceability. That something is part of a requirement. Another important thing I will look for is we review the migration tools and techniques to minimize the data loss. We validate source and target systems. We ensure data validation, reconciliation, and we also assess the impact of the migration on business process. So key objectives we have here is, which is we look for ensure minimal disruptions. Second, maintain the data integrity, regulatory compliance, and we establish the structure migration plan. That something is part of a requirement. Now, next thing is called as a changeover. Very, very important. So when you're talking about changeover, you're doing a transition from old to new. So you need to ensure smooth transition. We need to reduce the operation disruption. By this we can able to mitigate risk of data loss. So we have a different type of changeover. The first is called as a parallel changeover. Parallel changeover is we have an old system and we have a new system. Both are running simultaneously. We are using this in that case when we are running a critical applications. So we use both, but cost is very high, expensive maintenance is there, but it reduces the risk, but require the extra resource. Okay. Second is basically called as a phase changeover. Phase changeover is system is replaced module by module. Like one module of this will be replaced with the old. And by this, we minimize the risk by progressively switching over and require the careful planning and monitoring. But direct changeover is called bring back. We look for the opportunity and suddenly we shift from old to new. And there's no fallback. So we do in that case when it's a non-critical application, but we never take a call with the critical application. So that is basically called as a direct changeover. Now, what is the role of an auditor here? That's a question. So let me summarize again. The first is called as a parallel changeover, where we build both system, we running both system, and then we parallelly shift. Second is called phase. We introduce by phase. First, this model will be replaced. Then this model will be replaced. When we replace any candidate in the company, what do we first prepare the backup, we replace in the phases. But direct changeover is basically when in one go we implement, or there's a sudden application failure and all that, and we're shifting from the old to new immediately, and there's no rollback. So it's high risk but faster implementation, and we do in that case when we're having a non-critical application. So what is the auditor perspective? So we have to review the changeover strategy. We ensure rollback plan are in place. We validate the user training and readiness. That's a very important part. And we confirm the system integration testing and data integrity need to be there. So the key objectives here is ensure the secure, well-controlled transition should be there. That's a very important part. We minimize the business operational impact. And more important, we verify the testing contingency measures. Okay, all those things need to be checked. We need to check for the sign-off approvals. That is also another important part of the requirement. That is why in this process of migration, change management process is very important, because whenever doing a changes and all that, whenever we have a parallel changeover, we have to document that. So we need to ensure the controlled transition to system update, because change management directly with the integrity. So by having a change management process, we can able to track the integrity, and change management also provide the business continuity. How? Let's say example, I request for a change. So when we send the request for change, they will first approve the change, then they will test the change. They build the change in a test environment. If they okay, then only they introduce in a production environment. So all these things ensure the continuity in a business operations. So that's why it's very important. Now, when we going for the change procedures, we follow some factors. So we have a changeover risk factor like asset safeguarding. We have to ensure that no data loss or corruption should be there. Data integrity need to be maintained. Whatever in the old data have in applications, a new application should have a new old data. System effectiveness should be there. It should be, that's why we do regression testing also. Change management, review the compliance configuration and all that, and duplicate missing records, which validate the data migration quality and all that. So what is the auditor review and migration process? We ensure the methodology exists for tracking. We verify the emergency change procedures. We confirm security access controls should be there, both sides. And we also check the user satisfactions, turnaround time, is it close in a defined time frame? And we also evaluate the enterprise process for, handling the emergency change and everything. So all those things part of a requirement. One more important thing, when we go for this change procedure and all that, we need to have one centralized repository where we document all the change, because when you're having a one central repository, it is easy to track. So we have to make sure all the requirements change are properly documented. And when auditor come for an audit and when he asks for, okay, you introduce the change, show me the logs. So you need to have the logs. If an auditor come for an audit where he will auditing the infrastructure, so he need a change control log. So it's very important. The logs need to be maintained. We need to also verify the change were applied correctly. We take the sample artifact and we validate whether it is actually done that or not. We also review the test plan results. We check if security control are properly implemented, and we validate only one version of source code exists in the production. That something is part of a requirement. Along with that, we examine the documentations for accuracy, verify the test procedures. We confirm the emergency access restrictions logs and business continuities aligned with the system update. Because when we introducing any RFC, when we raise the RFC, we have to add, do you have any backup plan for this change? So that is also very important. So by doing this, we maintain the control and secure environment. We reduce the risk of system downtime. And more important, we can able to strengthen the change control, compliance, governance, and everything. Now, once we done everything and all that, we're preparing the application to be used in a production environment. So there is one process called as a certification and accreditation. See, technical evaluation of a product, UAT, is called as a certification. When you're submitting the UAT reports, associate risk of the product to the management, when the management accepting that, this process is called as a accreditation. It is same like you go for the isaca CISA exam, right? It doesn't mean you pass the exam. You have to demonstrate your 5-year experience in the audit, right? So isaca will review that application, and based on that, they will approve your name as a CISA. Then only you can use CISA in your name, right? So that is called accreditation. They're giving you a name. So why certification accreditation is important? Because it ensures the compliance, validate the security control, mitigate the risk by enforcing the best practices. That's something they follow for the function. So as a CISA, assessor perform a compliance security review, independent should be there. Compliance check against the policy, procedure, guideline need to be maintained, and security risk and requirement evaluate for the accreditation. That something is part of a requirement. So accreditation process what? So senior officials authorize the IS security for operations. They evaluate the mission relevance, define the formal authority, accountability for system security failure. Now, if you're looking for management to accept this, we have some key success factor like documentations, timely assessment certifications, and compliance. That's a very, very important part of the requirement. Now, what auditor has to check is to verify the security assessment meet the standard, because sometimes auditor will involved in their accreditation process. When management reviewing the reports and all that, they involve the auditor also to have an independent viewpoint. So they verify security assessment meet the industry standards. We ensure controls are correctly implemented, and we review the accreditation decisions. So the overall key objective is to establish a secure IS governance through the risk-based certification. And we also ensure the ongoing compliance, and we assign the clear accountability for security risk. That's why we also have important phase here, which is called as a post implementation review. Okay, post implementation review. When the application successfully implemented in the organization, we review whether it met the objectives, whether business objective has been met, what is the lesson learned. We evaluate the advocacy control ROI, we value the cost benefit. So two things are there here. One is called system advocacy review, where we check whether the system meet the user business need. We assess user satisfactions and issue tracking. And we also check if the control being defined and implemented correctly. On the other side, when we're talking about performance and ROI, we compare the projected versus actual cost, we address the deficiencies, and we implement the recommendation for improvement. We also check some other activities like project management evaluation, where I verify whether the standard method has been followed, whether risk mitigation has been done properly, was the project was completed with the acceptable risk level. And to check that, we do something like we validate the post-implementation review, we ensure the post-implementation review is independent, we assess adherence to schedule and deliverables, and we also check if the system issues are resolved efficiently or not. That's a very important part. Along with that, we also confirm the audit documentation is maintained, and we review the risk register for unresolved project risk. And in all this activity, the key objective is to make sure we have a continuous improvement by applying the PIR, improve the project planning execution so we can use as a case study for our next project. We ensure the project closure aligns with the business objective, and we will check as per the business case, the project need to be closed in 7th January. Is the closure has been done on 7th January. We also ensure system stability and validate the business goals. So all those things is part of a requirement. So do let me know, how do you find this particular video? Do you find this video different from any other videos what you have seen? If yes, type yes and give me the feedback. What is the best way we can improve? How do you find these sessions? And one thing for sure is, without you, I'm nothing. So you are not my subscribers, you are my gladiators, you are my family. And this is all from my side. One thing is that my identity is built based on your success. So I'm nothing without you. So if you really think it's worth it, you reshare this content maximum to the people, because my future goal is to make such kind of a training content free, accessible to everyone, because education must be free, right? We only paying for the time. That's the thing. So this is all from my side. Do let me know how do you find, and if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. Good day. Bye.